Chapter 1. The Choosing. The village square was silent except for the low whisper of the wind threading through the gnarled branches of the ancient trees that hemmed in the crumbling stone cottages. It was the kind of silence that weighed heavy thick with dread and old promises no one dared to break. Arya stood at the edge of the gathering, her heart pounding loud enough she was sure the entire village could hear it. The wooden stage before the elders was bathed in the dim light of flickering torches, their orange flames casting long shadows over the rough, hewn faces of the village leaders. She clenched her fists at her sides, nails biting into her palms. They had chosen her. Her mind refused to accept it, even as the eldest of the elders, a stooped woman with eyes sharp as broken glass, stepped forward. The villagers watched in breathless silence, their faces etched with the same mix of fear and reverence that had ruled their lives for generations. Arya, the elder's voice was barely above a whisper, but it carried to every corner of the square. You have been chosen as the sacrifice to the forest gods. It is your duty to protect us all. The word sacrifice struck her like a blade, sharp and cold, but Arya lifted her chin, defiance flaring in her green eyes. This isn't protection, she said, voice steady despite the chaos in her chest. It's a curse. We've been bound to these old stories for too long. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. The elders exchanged uneasy glances, but no one dared challenge the tradition. The forest gods demanded a life every decade, or the land would rot, the crops fail, and death would creep into every home. It was an unspoken truth no one questioned until now. Arya's gaze flicked to the shadowed tree line beyond the village where twisted branches clawed at the sky. That forest was more than just trees and darkness. It was a living nightmare, whispered about in hushed tones, a place where the monsters lived. Monster. She had grown up hearing their stories. Beasts with eyes like burning coal, spirits that could twist your mind, gods with horns as sharp as blades. But Arya had never believed, not truly, until the day they chose her. Do you accept your fate? The elder asked, her voice heavy with expectation. Arya's jaw tightened. She was 18 years old, strong and stubborn, and she refused to be a pawn in their game, yet she also knew resistance was futile. The bindings of tradition were stronger than any blade. I will go, she said, voice cold, but inside a spark of rebellion burned brighter than ever. The village prepared for the ritual with somber efficiency. Arya's mother had disappeared years ago, swallowed by the forest, they said. Arya kept a secret buried deep. She wasn't just any girl. Something ancient stirred within her blood, a power she barely understood. Her only comfort was the worn leather pendant around her neck, a keepsake from her mother, carved with strange symbols that pulsed faintly against her skin. That night, Arya sat by the dying hearth in her small cottage, listening to the whispers of the wind and the distant howl of wolves. Tomorrow, she would walk into the forest and face whatever waited. Her younger brother, Joran, sat across from her, eyes wide and filled with silent tears. You'll come back, won't you? Arya forced a smile, reaching across the table to squeeze his hand. I promise, but promises were fragile things. Dawn came pale and cold. The villagers gathered again, lining the dirt path that led into the heart of the cursed woods. Arya walked between them, each step heavy with the weight of 1,000 eyes. The forest loomed ahead, dark and alive, its breath cold against her skin. The air smelled of earth and decay and something old and waiting. She stepped beneath the twisted canopy, the shadows swallowing her whole. The forest was alive in ways she hadn't imagined. The trees seemed to watch, their branches twitching like claws. The ground pulsed beneath her feet, as if breathing with a slow, deliberate rhythm. And then from the shadows came the monsters. 4 figures emerged, each more terrifying than the last, beasts of nightmare and legend, their forms shifting and shimmering in the half-light. The first was Kale, the beast, massive and fierce, with amber eyes glowing like embers and a body covered in scars. His growl rumbled like thunder, shaking the leaves. Then Seraphiz, the serpent, sleek and lithe, silver hair cascading over pale skin, eyes like frozen ice that seemed to pierce straight through her soul. Next was Ashar, the shadow, tall and dark, his skin shifting like smoke, eyes absorbing the light itself. He moved silently, watching her with a protectiveness that was both comforting and unnerving. And finally Therion, the horned god, majestic, with curling horns and eyes that held the weight of centuries. They spoke in voices like the wind through dry leaves, ancient and commanding. You are the key, Therion said, his voice both a promise and a warning. Bound to us by blood and magic. Only you can break the chains that bind us. Arya's heart thundered, but she stood tall. I don't belong here. Kale stepped forward, eyes blazing. "You belong to the forest now." The ritual began. Ancient runes glowing along the bark of the trees, chains of shadow wrapping around Arya's wrists, binding her to the monsters. Pain exploded through her veins, but she refused to cry out. Her voice, when she spoke, was clear and strong. "I will not be your prisoner." Seraphis smiled, cruel and charming. "No one said you were a prisoner. You are our salvation." As night fell, Arya found herself trapped in a world between nightmare and reality, surrounded by the creatures she was meant to fear, yet somehow she felt the barest flicker of something else. A fragile thread of trust, a challenge, a promise. She was bound to the monsters, bound by curse and magic, bound by a fate older than memory, and the battle for her soul had only just begun. Chapter 2. Chains and Whispers. The forest breath was cold and thick, pressing against Arya's skin like a living thing. Her wrist throbbed where the shadow, chains bit into her flesh, faintly glowing with a dull, smoky light. They weren't ordinary chains, more like threads of magic, alive and tightening with her every heartbeat. The monsters circled her, silent but watchful, like predators sizing up their prey. Their eyes, amber, ice, blue, shadow, dark, and emerald, gleamed in the faint light, piercing through the mist that clung to the forest floor. Arya's breath came in shallow bursts. She refused to show fear, not now, not when everything inside her screamed to run. "Why are you keeping me here?" Her voice was raw but steady. "What do you want from me?" Kale's amber eyes locked onto hers, fierce and unblinking. He stepped forward, muscles rippling beneath scarred skin, his voice low and gravelly like distant thunder. "You are the key, Arya. The curse will not break without you. We cannot leave this forest until the chains are lifted." Arya's heart hammered. "I don't want your chains or your curses. I want my life back." Seraphis, lounging against a twisted oak like a shadow made flesh, smirked. "Your life, you mean the one you left behind, the one bound by fear and superstition." Eshar's eyes flicked with something unreadable, something like sorrow, as he added softly, "This forest holds truths your village won't tell you. We protect them." Therion, standing tall with his horns catching the scarce light, nodded solemnly. "We mean you no harm, but the forest demands balance. Your sacrifice will restore it." Arya shook her head, anger bubbling beneath her calm facade. "I'm no sacrifice." The forest seemed to lean in closer, branches creaking and groaning like the breath of ancient bones. Then Kale's voice dropped to a growl, almost a whisper. "You have no choice." The night pressed on, thick with the scent of moss and damp earth. Arya's legs ached from standing, the chains around her wrists glowing faintly, pulsing like a heartbeat. The monsters didn't speak much after that, but their presence was overwhelming, constant and inescapable, alone but not alone. She shivered, drawing her cloak tighter. Memories flooded. Her mind, her mother's whispered warnings, the flicker of those strange symbols on the pendant she wore, and the lingering question. Why her? Suddenly, a voice broke the silence. "You feel it too, don't you?" Arya turned sharply. Hale stood just a few feet away, eyes softer now but still glowing. "The power inside you, the forest's blood, it's why you were chosen." She swallowed hard, forcing herself to meet his gaze. "I'm not like you." Kale's lips twitched into a sad smile. "No, you're not." He moved closer, careful not to touch the chains. "But you're bound to us now, and the forest won't let go." Hours passed like minutes. Arya sat beneath an ancient oak, tracing the lines of the pendant against her palm. The symbols pulsed faintly, warmth spreading through her fingers. The monsters gathered near a fire that sputtered weakly, their forms flickering in the flame's glow. Seraphis caught her watching and offered a crooked smile. "You'll learn. The forest's magic runs through you. It's in your bloodline. Why me?" Arya whispered, voice cracking. "What does my mother have to do with this?" Varian's voice was gentle, almost a whisper. "She was one of us once, a guardian before the curse. She gave herself to protect this place, and you carry her legacy." Arya's chest tightened. She had always wondered where her mother went. Now she realized her absence was a part of something far bigger. Suddenly, the night shattered with a scream, raw, desperate, echoing through the trees. Eshar was on his feet instantly, shadows coiling around him like a cloak. "Stay here." "No," Arya said, surprising herself. "I'm not just your prisoner." Kale's eyes flared. "You want to come? Then stay close. It's dangerous." Together, they moved into the darkness. The scream led them to a clearing where a twisted shape writhed on the ground. A young boy no older than Joran caught in one of the forest's cursed traps. Arya's heart clenched. The boy's eyes met hers, wide with terror. Kale's beast growled low. These traps are meant to protect the forest from intruders, but sometimes they catch the innocent. Without hesitation, Arya stepped forward, reaching out to touch the boy's trembling hand. Her pendant flared brightly, warmth flowing from it like sunlight breaking through storm clouds, the chains on. Her wrists pulsed violently, but she ignored the burning. Magic surged from her, unraveling the cursed vines binding the boy. He gasped, free at last. Arya looked at Kale, breathless. I didn't know I could do that. Kale's gaze softened. Your power is awakening. It's tied to us and to this land. As they returned to the camp, Arya felt the weight of her new reality settle deeper in her bones. She was bound to the monsters, bound to the forest, bound by a power she barely understood, and the curse was only beginning to unravel. Chapter 3. Bloodlines and Secrets. The fire's glow flickered against the rough bark, casting long, dancing shadows that stretched and twisted like ghosts among the trees. The night around them was thick, almost suffocating in its silence, save for the crackling of the fire and the soft rustle of leaves. Arya sat cross-legged on the mossy ground, the chains binding her wrists cold but strangely comforting now, as if they hummed with the pulse of the forest itself. The pendant around her neck glowed faintly, a heartbeat against her chest. Kale leaned against a gnarled tree nearby, eyes fixed on her with a guarded intensity that made her skin prickle. I need to understand, she said softly, breaking the silence. Kale's amber gaze flickered with something unreadable. You want to know why you were chosen? Arya nodded, biting her lip. Why me? Why did the forest demand my sacrifice? Kale pushed off the tree and approached her, slow and deliberate like a cat stalking its prey, but with none of the menace this time. You carry the blood of the old guardians, he said. Your mother was one of them. She bound herself to the forest long ago to protect it, to keep the curse at bay. Arya's breath caught. Then why did she leave us? Why did she disappear? Kale's expression darkened. Because the curse demands a price. The guardians are trapped between two worlds, bound by magic and duty. Your mother. She chose to vanish rather than let the curse consume everything. A silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken truths. You're part of that legacy now, Kale continued, his voice softer. The power in your blood isn't just a curse, it's a responsibility. The forest chose you because it needs you to break the cycle. Arya's mind raced. Break the cycle. How? Kale's eyes burned brighter. By embracing what you are. By facing the monsters not as enemies but as allies. Before Arya could respond, Seraphis's icy voice cut through the air. Enough talk of bloodlines and fate, she said, stepping into the firelight. The forest doesn't care about your doubts. It cares about survival. Eshar appeared beside her, shadows swirling like smoke around his form. The curse is growing stronger. The village is already suffering. Crops wither, illness spreads, Therians. The voice rumbled through the clearing. Time is running out. Arya felt the weight of their words settle over her like a shroud. The choice was no longer hers. She had to act, to harness the power inside her, or watch everything she loved decay. Her gaze fell to the pendant, the ancient symbols glowing faintly. A thread of warmth curled through her fingers. She stood, chains clinking softly. Then teach me. Kale's eyes narrowed, surprise flickering across his face. You want to learn. Arya's nod was fierce. If I'm bound to this curse, then I want to fight it. I want to understand. For the first time since she entered the forest, the tension between them eased. Kale gave a small, almost reluctant smile. Good, because the path ahead is dark. But you won't walk it alone. The fire burned low as the monsters settled. Each retreating into their own shadows. Arya sat back down, staring into the embers, thoughts swirling. The forest was no longer just a place of fear. It was her home now. And the monsters were no longer just beasts. They were her guardians. Her heart ached with the weight of their silent promise. She was bound to them, bound to the curse, bound to fight. And somewhere deep inside, she felt the first flicker of hope. Chapter 4. Awakening Flames. Dawn was a pale promise behind the thick canopy. The forest alive with whispers of rustling leaves and distant bird calls. The night shadows clung stubbornly to the trunks and tangled roots, but Arya was awake long before the sun dared to break through. She sat cross-legged on a bed of soft moss, the chains around her wrists loosened just enough to remind her they were still there, still binding her. The pendant hung heavy on her chest, pulsing with a steady warmth like a quiet heartbeat. Kale stood nearby, arms crossed, watching her with a mixture of impatience and something softer, a guarded respect, maybe for the first time since she arrived. Ready, his voice was low, rough like gravel. Arya nodded, heart thudding with a strange mix of fear and anticipation. Good, Kale said. He stepped forward and held out his hand. A faint flicker of flame danced on his fingertips, small but fierce, like a candle struggling against the wind. Control, that's the first lesson. Magic isn't a force to wield blindly. It listens to your will, your emotions. It flows where you guide it. Arya's gaze locked on the flame, mesmerized despite herself. She reached out tentatively, and the heat prickled at her skin. Try to hold it, Kale instructed, eyes sharp. She took a slow breath, steadying herself, and lifted her palm closer to the fire. The flame flickered violently, then steadied, growing slightly. Under her silent command, a smile tugged at her lips. I did it, Kale's expression softened, but his eyes held a warning. Good, but that's only the beginning. For hours, Kale guided her, teaching her to shape fire, to call it gently and coax it to her will. Arya's muscles ached, sweat mingled with soot on her skin, but something inside her bloomed, a fierce, bright spark she hadn't felt before. Between lessons, Kale grew quieter, almost distant, as if the memory of his own past battles weighed on him. One moment, as the firelight danced across his face, Arya dared to ask, "Why do you protect me? If you hate humans so much?" Kale's eyes darkened. "I don't hate you, not you." He looked away. "The curse twisted us, but we were once guardians too, like your mother, bound by duty, torn by loss." Arya's heart ached for him, for all of them. "I don't want to be trapped like this, bound to chains and curses." Kale's voice dropped to a whisper, barely audible over the crackling fire. "Maybe the chains are stronger than we know, but maybe. So is the fire inside you." Night bled into day, and as the sun crept higher, Arya's confidence grew with her power. Yet with it came an undeniable exhaustion, a draining pull she couldn't explain. That evening, she sat by the fire alone, her hands trembling slightly as the chains glowed faintly. Kale approached quietly. "The magic takes a toll. It feeds on your strength. You must learn balance." Arya nodded, biting back frustration. "I'm not afraid." He looked at her then, eyes full of something unreadable. "You should be." Suddenly, a distant howl shattered the calm, sharp and urgent. Kale's body tensed. "They're close." Arya stood, chains rattling. Who? Kale's voice was grim. "Hunters. Those who seek to destroy the forest, and everything bound to it." The monsters stirred, a ripple of tension passing through them like electricity. Arya swallowed hard. The danger wasn't just outside the forest walls anymore. It was closing in. The forest held its breath, and so did Arya. Chapter 5, Shadows at the Edge. The howl echoed again, closer this time, a chilling sound that sliced through the stillness of the forest like a blade. Arya's breath hitched, eyes wide in the fading light. The trees seemed to lean in, whispering warnings she couldn't ignore. Kale's jaw clenched. "Hunters. They know you're here." Seraphis moved like liquid shadow, slipping silently between the trees to take position. Ashar's form blurred and twisted as he melted into the darkness, leaving only his glowing eyes behind. Therian stepped forward, muscles coiled ready. Arya's heart pounded so loud she thought it might drown out the forest itself. She tightened her grip on the glowing, pendant a tether to the power she was only beginning to understand. "Stay close," Kale commanded, his voice low but fierce. "We fight together." A sudden crack of twigs, a rush of movement, and the hunters were upon them. Men in dark leather, faces painted with ash and fear, wielded weapons etched with runes that shimmered with unnatural energy. Their leader, a tall figure cloaked in bone, white fur, stepped forward, eyes burning with cold hatred. "Hand over the girl," he snarled. "She belongs to us." Arya stepped forward, chest heaving, fire flickering to life in her palms. "I don't belong to anyone." The leader's lips curled into a cruel smile. "You belong to the curse, and we will end it." The battle erupted. Keel and the others moved with deadly grace, each monster unleashing their own power. Seraphis blades sliced through the air, catching the hunters in shimmering arcs of shadow. Ashar summoned tendrils of smoke and flame, weaving destruction with every step. Tharion's roar shook the ground, his strength shattering shields and bones alike. Arya felt the fire surge through, her veins fierce and wild. She threw flames at the nearest hunter, watching as his armor melted away under the blaze. But even as she fought, doubt gnawed at her. Was this the path her mother chose? To fight a war with no end. The leader lunged, his weapon crackling with dark energy. Kale intercepted, their blades clashing in a shower of sparks. "You don't understand," the leader hissed. "The forest's power will consume you all." Kale's eyes flashed with defiance. "We'll burn it down before that happens." Amid the chaos, Arya caught a glimpse of the pendant, glowing brighter than ever. A sudden surge of warmth flooded her chest. Steadying her with a cry, she unleashed a wave of fire that sent the hunters reeling, their formations breaking. But the leader only laughed, a sound as cold and unforgiving as winter. "This is only the beginning," he vowed, retreating into the shadows with his remaining men. The forest fell, silent once more. Arya stood trembling, chest heaving, the fire in her hands flickering weakly. Hale approached, placing a steady hand on her shoulder. "You did well." Arya looked up, eyes fierce despite the exhaustion. "This war, it's bigger than me." Cale nodded, "and it's only just begun." The chains around Arya's wrists glinted in the fading light, a reminder that her fate was bound not just to the monsters but to a battle that could consume them all. Chapter 6. Whispers in the dark. The forest breathed a heavy sigh of relief, but Arya felt no peace. The fire in her veins had dimmed to a fragile ember, and the weight of the fight pressed down on her chest like a stone. She sat by the dying embers of their campfire, the cool night air brushing against her skin, the chains around her wrists heavier than ever. Around her, the monsters tended their wounds there, expressions grim but resolute. Cale lingered nearby, staring into the darkness beyond the trees, his jaw tight. After a long silence, he finally spoke. "They're not just hunters, they're hunters with a purpose. They want to control the curse, to bend the forest's power to their will." Arya's eyes widened. "Why? What would they gain?" Cale's gaze didn't waver. "Power? Control. The same reason anyone chases shadows in the dark." The pendant pulsed softly against her chest, a faint glow that seemed to call to something deep within the forest. Seraphis approached silently, her voice a low whisper. "The leader. He carries a mark, the mark of the void. It's ancient magic, forbidden and dangerous." Arya frowned. "What does it mean?" "It means he's not just here for the curse," Seraphis said, eyes cold. "He wants to destroy everything, guardians, monsters, the forest itself." Ashar's smoky form flickered beside her. "If he succeeds, the balance will shatter. Darkness will consume all." Arya shivered, the weight of their words sinking in. "Then we have to stop him," she said firmly, gripping the pendant. Cale's eyes softened. "We will, but first you need to learn to control your power, truly control it. Not just fire, but the ancient magic in your blood." The night deepened, shadows pooling around them like ink. Arya lay back on the mossy ground, staring up at the fractured sky through the canopy. Questions swirled in her mind about her mother, the curse, the hunters, and the future she was forced to face. But beneath the fear, beneath the doubt, something stronger began to grow. A fierce determination, a spark of hope, because now more than ever, Arya knew one thing for certain: she was bound to the monsters, and she would fight for the forest, for her past, and for a future still unwritten. Chapter 7. Echoes of the past. The forest was quieter than usual, bathed in the soft light of dawn filtering through the trees. A fragile calm after the storm, but Arya felt anything but peaceful. Cale stood before her, his usual stoic expression softened by the morning light. "Today's lesson was different. Today," he said, "we'll go beyond the fire." Arya's gaze sharpened. "Beyond fire." Cale nodded. "Your mother's magic wasn't just flame. It was ancient, tied to the forest itself. You carry that blood, it's time to awaken it." He led her deeper into the woods, to a place where the trees grew taller, their roots tangled like veins through the earth. A circle of stones marked the center, worn smooth by time. "Place your hands here," Cale instructed, stepping back. Arya did, feeling the cold stone beneath her palms. A hum thrummed through her fingers, a pulse, slow and steady, like the heartbeat of the forest. Closing her eyes, she reached inward, searching for the magic her mother had wielded so effortlessly. At first, nothing, just silence. Then, a flicker, a whisper of green light, twisting like tendrils of smoke. She gasped. Images flooded her mind, glimpses of her mother standing beneath this very canopy, chanting words in a language older than the trees, calling forth life and power. Arya's heart raced as she tried to mimic the feeling, reaching out with trembling hands. The stones beneath her began to glow faintly, responding to her touch. Cale watched intently. "Good. You're connecting." Suddenly a voice echoed through the clearing, soft, urgent, almost like a breath. Arya. Her eyes snapped open. The forest around her seemed to lean closer, expectant. Cale's voice was calm but firm. "Focus. That voice is your mother's magic reaching out." A tear slipped down Arya's cheek. "Mom," the moment shattered as a distant shout rang out. "Hunters." Cale's face darkened. We're not safe here, but Arya hesitated, torn between fear and the pull of the magic. I need to know, she whispered. I need to understand, Kale nodded reluctantly. Then we fight. But together the monsters appeared from the shadows, their forms blending with the trees as they prepared for the coming storm. Arya stood tall, the pendant glowing bright against her chest. Her mother's magic was awakening, and so was she. Chapter 8. The Hunter's Pursuit. The moon hung low over the jagged peaks beyond the forest, a pale witness to the chaos stirring beneath its watchful eye. Inside the hunter's camp, a sprawling network of tents and makeshift fortifications carved from bone and wood, the air thrummed with restless energy. Torches flickered against the heavy shadows, casting sharp angles across the faces of the gathered men and women, warriors marked by scars and grim determination, each one a piece of a larger, relentless machine. At the center of it all stood the leader, known among his kind as Malric, the man with the mark of the void etched into his pale skin, a swirling sigil glowing faintly with an eerie, unnatural light. His presence was magnetic, terrifying. The room fell silent as he spoke. "We are hunters," Malric began, his voice smooth but edged with steel. "Born to cleanse the world of the curse, to rip the poison from the roots of this forest. We have chased shadows, fought monsters, and lost brothers. But the time has come to end this." He raised a gauntleted hand, and the gathered hunters lowered their weapons in unison, a pact sealed in silent obedience. "We have tracked the girl," he continued, eyes narrowing. "Arya, she is the last of the bloodline, the key to the curse's power." A murmur rippled through the crowd. "She is dangerous," Malric said, "because she is not yet fully aware of the fire inside her. But if she awakens the ancient magic, the forest's true strength, we lose everything. The curse will consume the world." A grizzled hunter stepped forward, a deep scar cutting through his left cheek. "What is the plan, Malric? We can hunt her forever, but she grows stronger every day." Malric smiled, cold and calculating. "We do not hunt to kill. Not yet." He turned, moving toward a large map pinned to the wooden wall, marked with symbols and lines tracing the forest's hidden paths. "We capture her." The room shifted. Some hunters exchanged uneasy glances. "A cage built not of iron but of magic," Malric said, tapping the map where a cluster of ancient runes glowed faintly. "A prison to bind her powers and bend them to our will." From a shadowed corner, a young woman stepped forward, her eyes gleaming with determination. "Malric, what of the monsters guarding her, the one she calls allies?" Malric's gaze sharpened. "They are nothing but beasts twisted by the curse. Dangerous, yes, but predictable. And when the key falls, the beasts will fall with her." He pointed toward a symbol on the map, a black thorn entwined around a silver flame. "The ritual must be done at the heart of the forest, where the curse's power flows strongest. There we will sever the link and end this." The hunters prepared through the night, sharpening weapons etched with runes, whispering prayers to gods long forgotten, and weaving charms to protect against the forest's unseen magic. Malric sat alone for a moment, hands resting on the hilt of a wicked dagger. His thoughts flickered back to a time long before the hunt began, a memory buried deep beneath the scars of his own past, a memory of fire and loss. A woman cloaked in shadows, whispering a warning he refused to heed. "She was my sister," he muttered, voice barely audible. "And I will finish what I started." Outside, the forest breathed around the camp, alive, watching, waiting. Farther in, Arya and the monsters remained unaware of the storm gathering in the hunters' hearts. But soon the chase would begin again, and this time there would be no running. Chapter 9. Flames of Awakening. The forest was alive with a new kind of energy, electric and raw, humming beneath the surface like a coiled serpent. Morning light filtered through the leaves, dappling the mossy ground with soft patches of gold. Arya stood at the edge of the stone circle where Kale had begun her training, her hands trembling as she clutched the pendant resting against her chest. The faint glow of the pendant pulsed in sync with her heartbeat, a steady rhythm that anchored her swirling thoughts. Kale watched her closely, his eyes sharp but patient, ready. He asked. Arya nodded, though doubt gnawed at her. "Can I really do this? Am I strong enough today?" "You learn control," Kale said, stepping beside her. "Not just to summon fire, but to become one with it, to bend it without letting it consume you." Kale moved to the center of the circle, raising his hand to the sky. The air shifted, a breath held, waiting. "Focus on the flame inside you, feel it, don't fight it." Arya closed her eyes, inhaling deeply. She imagined the fire, a tiny spark flickering deep in her, core fragile. but alive. She reached inward, willing it to grow, to respond. At first there was nothing, just the pounding of her heart and the whisper of the forest around her. Then a flicker, a warmth blossomed in her palm, faint but undeniable. Her eyes snapped open. A small flickering flame danced above her hand, casting shifting shadows across the stones. Cale nodded slowly. Good, but the moment shattered as a sudden gust of wind slammed through the clearing, extinguishing the flame. Arya stumbled, startled. Cale's gaze darkened. The forest resists. It's testing you. Testing me, Arya whispered, frustration and fear tightening her chest. Magic isn't just power, Cale said. It's trust between you and the world. He knelt beside her, voice softer now. Your mother knew this. She didn't just command fire, she listened to it, felt its heartbeat. Arya's thoughts raced back to the brief visions from the clearing, her mother's whispered words, her steady hands weaving through ancient chants. Can I do that? She asked. Cale smiled faintly. You will. They spent the morning practicing, Arya's flames flickering to life again and again, sometimes bright and fierce, other times weak and wavering. Each time the flame faltered, Cale was there, steady and patient, guiding her through the frustration. But the real test came when Cale summoned his own power. A swirling vortex of dark energy coiling like smoke around his fists. Now you hold your flame against the darkness, he said. Arya's breath caught. The darkness felt cold, suffocating, a shadow reaching for her fire. She raised her hand, summoning her flame, her small light flickering bravely. The two forces met, fire against shadow, the air thick with tension. Arya felt the flame within her surge, a wild roar rising from her core. But the darkness pushed back, relentless. Suddenly, the flame flared higher, bright and blinding, until it burst into a roaring blaze that chased the darkness away. Arya gasped, her hands glowing with heat. The stone circle seemed to hum beneath her feet, the forest itself responding to her power. Cale's eyes shone with approval. You're stronger than you know. Exhausted but exhilarated, Arya sank to the ground, the pendant's glow fading to a gentle pulse. She stared up at the sky, the canopy framing patches of blue and gold. But what price will this power demand? She wondered. As she rested, a soft voice brushed through the leaves, a whisper only she could hear. Arya. Her eyes flew open, heart pounding. Cale looked at her, concern flickering across his face. What is it? She shook her head. I don't know, it's like a memory or a warning. Suddenly, her vision blurred and she was pulled into a vivid flashback. The world shifted, colors bright and surreal. A young woman stood in the same clearing, chanting words that seemed to dance on the wind. The woman's eyes were fierce, her hands weaving fire and light. Protect the balance, she whispered, or all will be lost. The image blurred into a symbol, a burning tree entwined with thorny vines. Arya blinked, tears spilling down her cheeks. Cale's voice was steady beside her. Your mother's magic. It's a warning. She wiped her eyes, determination hardening in her gaze. I won't let her sacrifice be in vain. The forest around them seemed to breathe, alive and watching, and somewhere in the shadows, eyes gleamed with dark intent. Chapter 10, Shadows of the Past. The sun was dipping low behind the trees, painting the sky in shades of amber and crimson, as Arya sat quietly beside the flickering campfire. The day's training had left her exhausted, but the questions swirling in her mind refused rest. Heel sat opposite her, sharpening his blade with slow, deliberate strokes. The steady scrape of stone against metal was almost meditative, a sharp contrast to the storm raging inside Arya's heart. She traced the pendant hanging from her neck, its warmth a subtle comfort. I want to know more, she said suddenly, about my mother, about the curse, about everything. Cale paused, setting the blade aside and meeting her gaze. Then it's time you saw the past. He reached into his satchel and withdrew a small ancient tome bound in worn leather. The cover was embossed with a symbol. The same burning tree entwined with thorny vines that had appeared in Arya. Vision, your mother's journal, Cale explained. She wrote it to preserve what she knew, her hopes, fears, and warnings. Arya's fingers trembled as she opened the fragile pages, the scent of old parchment filling the air. The words were written in flowing script, beautiful yet haunting. To whoever finds this, beware the curse that binds our blood. It is not merely a magic to wield, but a fire to contain. Neither. The forest breathes with power older than time, and within it lies a darkness that seeks to consume all. I was chosen to guard the balance, to protect the sacred flame that sustains life and death alike. But the more I fought, the deeper the shadows grew. My greatest fear is that my daughter will inherit this burden, The fire and the curse entwined within her veins. If you read this, know that you are not alone. The forest watches, the monsters guard, and the hunters hunt. Trust in the power within, but beware the darkness outside and inside. Arya read and reread the words, feeling the weight of her mother's sacrifice settle over her like a cloak. Why didn't she tell me any of this? Arya whispered. Chaol sighed. She wanted to protect you. The less you knew, the safer you might be. But I'm not safe, Arya said, voice cracking. No, Chaol admitted. But knowledge is the first step to strength. He turned the page, revealing a detailed sketch, a map of the forest marked with symbols and warnings. This is where it began, Chaol said. The heart of the curse lies deep within the forest, in a place called the Thorned Hollow. Arya's eyes widened. The hunters want to do the ritual there. Chaol nodded gravely. If they succeed, it could mean the end of the forest's magic, and yours. Nithik, men, hath money thick, meanful tacte, to the ethindi. You're as the stave. You. A sudden rustle in the underbrush made them both tense. Chaol's hand went to his dagger as a figure emerged, Lyric, the quietest of the monsters, his eyes reflecting the firelight. They're moving, Lyric said in a low voice. The hunters grow bolder. They've sent scouts deeper into the forest. Arya's heart hammered. The threat was closer than ever. Chaol stood, voice steady. Then we prepare. Tomorrow we journey to Thorned Hollow. That night, Arya's dreams were restless. She found herself back in the vision, the woman cloaked in shadows, chanting beneath an ancient tree twisted with flame and thorn. Protect the balance, the woman said, or all will be lost. A sudden flash of pain shot through Arya's chest, like fire burning beneath her skin. She awoke gasping, sweat clinging to her brow. Chaol was there instantly, steadying her. It's the fire awakening, he said softly. You're beginning to connect, to feel her magic inside you. As dawn broke, Arya rose with new resolve. The path ahead was dark and dangerous, but she was no longer the girl hiding from her fate. She was the last flame of a legacy, written in fire and shadow, and she would fight to protect the forest and herself. Chapter 11. Journey into the Thorned Hollow. The morning air was crisp and cool as Arya fastened her cloak tightly around her shoulders. The forest loomed vast and ancient, its shadows stretching long in the early light. Every leaf, every whisper of the wind seemed alive with anticipation. Chaol stood ready, his stance calm and assured, while Lyric moved silently beside them, a watchful guardian cloaked in midnight hues. The trio had agreed to leave no time to waste. The hunters' scouts had been spotted near the outer edges, and the deeper they ventured, the closer the threat. Arya's heart thrummed fiercely as she stepped into the undergrowth, the weight of her mother's journal safe in her pack. The forest thickened quickly, twisting vines curling like serpents along ancient trees, their bark scarred with strange runes glowing faintly in the half-light. Stay close, Chaol warned, his eyes sharp. Lyric's senses seemed to extend into the shadows, his head swiveling silently, alert for any sign of danger. As they pushed forward, the air grew heavier, a mix of damp earth and something metallic like the scent of blood long dried. Arya's skin prickled. Suddenly, a sharp crack echoed nearby. Chaol dropped into a defensive stance, eyes scanning the brush. It's them, he growled. Hunters. From the trees emerged three figures clad in dark leather, their faces hidden beneath hoods, weapons gleaming with cruel intent. The tension snapped like a bowstring. Arya felt the fire flicker inside her again, a small but fierce spark. She raised her hands, willing the flame to rise, but Chaol shook his head sharply. Not yet, focus. We're not ready to fight. The hunters circled, their eyes cold, their movements calculated. Lyric stepped forward, his voice low and threatening. You will not pass. One hunter sneered. That's what they all say before they die. The confrontation escalated quickly, arrows streaking through the air, shadows twisting as Chaol and Lyric moved with supernatural speed, deflecting attacks with blade and claw. Arya stayed back, heart pounding, fighting to keep her flames controlled. One hunter lunged toward her, dagger raised, but before he could strike, Arya's flame burst forth, a roaring blaze that sent him staggering back. The other two retreated with curses, disappearing into the forest. Breathless, Arya collapsed onto a mossy rock. Chaol knelt beside her, concern flickering in his eyes. You're stronger than you realize, he said. But not in control, Arya whispered, sweat slicking her brow. We'll get there, Chaol assured her. They pressed on deeper into the forest's dark heart until the trees thinned and the ground beneath them became thorn, covered and twisted, the edge of Thorned Hollow. The air here was thick with ancient magic, crackling, pulsing, a raw power both beautiful and terrifying. Arya stepped forward, feeling the fire within her flare in response. "This is it," Kale said quietly. The balance and the battleground. As shadows lengthened and night fell, the group made camp near the Hollow's entrance. The pendant around Arya's neck glowed softly, a beacon in the darkness. She gazed into the flames of their campfire, the flames inside her echoing the wild dance before her eyes. Tomorrow the true battle would begin. Chapter 12. Into the heart of Thorned Hollow. The night whispered secrets as the campfire's glow faded beneath a canopy thick with twisted branches. The Thorned Hollow awaited. Arya's breath came shallow, her nerves taut like the strings of a bow. Around her, Kale and Lyric moved silently, their presence steady and unyielding. "This place," Kale murmured, "holds the core of the curse. The magic here is older than any of us, raw and unpredictable." Lyric's dark eyes scanned the shadows. "Even the monsters avoid the deepest parts. Something watches, something ancient." Arya tightened her grip on her mother's journal, the worn pages a lifeline in the darkness. As they stepped beyond the camp's edge, the forest seemed to close in, thick vines weaving a near impenetrable barrier. Thorny brambles scratched at their skin, and the air shimmered with a strange energy. "Stay close," Kale whispered. "The ground here feeds on fear." The trio moved cautiously, the sounds of the forest muffled and distorted. Each step felt heavy, as if the very earth was pulling them down. Suddenly the pendant on Arya's neck pulsed with light, illuminating a path etched into the ground. Ancient runes glowing faintly beneath the moss. "This is the way," Kale said, his voice barely audible. Arya followed, heart pounding. The runes glowed warmer as she neared, the fire within her responding like a heartbeat. Deeper in, the forest grew darker still. Shadows twisted into shapes, flickers of movement at the edge of vision. Lyric halted, growling low. "We're not alone." From the shadows emerged twisted forms, the corrupted remnants of once noble forest guardians, now beasts warped by the curse. They snarled, eyes blazing with malevolence. Kale drew his sword, the blade shimmering with a silvery light. "Defend her," he commanded. The battle erupted in a blur of motion, steel clashing, claws raking, magic flaring. Arya struggled to summon her flames, her power raw but unstable. The beast closed in, relentless and furious. In the chaos, Arya caught a glimpse of one beast, its eyes gleaming with a strange intelligence. "Wait," she whispered. Reaching deep inside, she forced her fire to calm, sending out a pulse of warmth that flickered like a promise. The creature hesitated, then slowly backed away, disappearing into the darkness. Breathing hard, Arya looked at Kale and Lyric. "There's more to this curse than just darkness," she said. "There's pain and maybe hope." Kale nodded. "The forest remembers. It fights back." As they pressed onward, the runes beneath their feet grew brighter, leading them to a clearing bathed in eerie moonlight. At its center stood an ancient tree, its bark blackened and twisted with thorns, the heart of Thorned Hollow. Arya felt a fire within her flare wildly, resonating with the tree's dark energy. "This is where it began," Kale said softly, "and where it must end." The wind stirred, carrying whispers of long-forgotten voices. Arya's journey was far from over. In this place of shadow and flame, she would face her destiny, and the truth of the curse that bound her to the monsters. Chapter 13. Flames of the Past. The moon hung low and silver over the twisted branches of Thorned Hollow, casting ghostly shadows that danced, in rhythm with the restless wind. The clearing around the ancient blackened tree felt charged, alive with whispered memories and untold pain. Arya sat cross-legged on the cold earth, the warmth of the campfire barely touching the chill that clung to her bones. The fire within her flickered, sometimes wild, sometimes weak, a reflection of the storm brewing inside. Kale and Lyric stood nearby, silent sentinels, watching over her, their eyes unreadable in the dim light. Her fingers brushed the worn leather cover of her mother's journal, open to a page marked with delicate script and strange symbols. It was her only link to the past, one that seemed both a promise and a curse. "Why me?" she whispered, voice trembling. "Why am I the one who has to carry this fire?" Kale knelt beside her, his expression softer than usual. "Because you're the last hope, the fire chooses its bearer. But it's so unpredictable," Arya said, frustration lacing her words. "Sometimes it feels like it's going to consume me." Lyric stepped closer, voice low and calm. "The power inside you is ancient. It's not just fire. It's everything your bloodline carries: strength, fury, and the capacity for great change. You have to learn to control it, not fight it. Her mind drifted back to memories. She had long buried flashes of her childhood. The night her village was burned, the terrifying flames she could not extinguish. Her mother's voice echoed softly, teaching her to breathe, to focus, to feel the fire as a part of her, not an enemy. Arya closed her eyes and took a deep breath, summoning the fire with gentle coaxing rather than force. Slowly, a small flame blossomed in her palm, a flickering ember that warmed her skin without burning. Good, Kael nodded approvingly. Control comes from understanding. But how? Arya asked. I'm scared I'll lose myself. You won't, Lyric assured. Because you're stronger than that. The fire is part of you. But it doesn't define you. Suddenly a sharp noise shattered the stillness, a twig snapping nearby. Kael's hand flew to his sword as Lyric melted into the shadows. Arya's heart raced as figures stepped from the darkness, their eyes cold, weapons raised. Enough hiding, their leader sneered. The girl with fire belongs to us. Kael moved to shield Arya, blade gleaming. The air crackled as Arya felt the fire surge inside her. This time steady, powerful, a blaze born of determination. She raised her hands, flames licking outward like a protective shield. The hunters hesitated, fear flickering in their eyes as the fire roared to life. Arya stood tall, heart pounding, not just with fear but with newfound strength. This ends now, she declared. The night exploded into chaos, fire against steel, shadows clashing with light. When the last hunter fled into the dark woods, Arya sank to her knees, breath ragged but victorious. Kael helped her up, pride shining in his eyes. You're ready, he said simply. Arya met his gaze, the fire inside her steady and bright. For what comes next, she whispered. The journey ahead was uncertain, fraught with danger and sacrifice. But for the first time, Arya felt the flame within her was no longer a curse, but a beacon. Her destiny was ignited. Chapter 14, Echoes of the Past. The fire's glow flickered softly as the group settled around the clearing, the ancient tree looming like a dark sentinel overhead. The forest was silent but for the crackle of flames and the distant call of unseen creatures. Kael leaned forward, eyes serious as he broke the quiet. We need to understand the curse fully if we are to break it, he said. That means knowing its origins and your mother's role in it. Arya's heart tightened. The name Mother felt like a thread pulling her back to a time shrouded in pain and mystery. She pulled the journal closer, opening to a page with an old, faded sketch of a woman holding a flame. Her voice was barely above a whisper as she began to read aloud from the worn pages. My dearest Arya, the fire that burns within you is both a gift and a burden. Long ago our bloodline was bound to the elemental spirits, guardians of balance between worlds. But power invites envy and darkness. The curse that now threatens us was born of betrayal and sorrow. I sealed the curse once, but only temporarily. Its roots run deep, entwined with our fate. You must be strong to face what lies ahead. Kael's gaze remained fixed on Arya. Your mother was one of the last guardians chosen to protect the balance, but the betrayal fractured the connection and the curse spread. Lyric's voice cut softly through the night. The monsters you face, they were once protectors, twisted by the curse. The forest itself is grieving. Arya's fingers trembled as she closed the journal, the weight of her inheritance pressing down on her. Why didn't she tell me all of this before? She asked, voice shaking. Kael's eyes darkened. Because the knowledge is dangerous. The curse hunts those who seek to understand it. Suddenly, a chilling howl echoed from the forest's edge, a reminder that the threat was never far. The group fell silent, each lost in thought. Arya's resolve hardened. If the curse is tied to my bloodline, she said, then I have to finish what she started. Kael nodded. We will stand with you, but the path will be perilous. Lyric stepped closer, his dark eyes meeting hers with fierce loyalty together. We can break the darkness. The night deepened, shadows lengthening like fingers reaching into their souls. But in the heart of Thorned Hollow, beneath the ancient boughs, a flicker of hope remained, burning bright as the fire within Arya. Soul. Chapter 15. Flames of Resolve. Dawn seeped quietly through the thick canopy of Thorned Hollow, casting pale light across the camp. The ancient tree's blackened silhouette stood tall against the morning mist, as if guarding secrets whispered only to the wind. Arya sat on a fallen log, her hands trembling slightly as she stared at the flickering ember floating above her palm. The flame danced, vibrant, alive, but still unpredictable, wild like a caged creature desperate to break free. Kael stood nearby, arms crossed, his usual stoic demeanor softened by a flicker of encouragement. "Focus on your breath," he advised. "Let the fire respond to your calm, not your fear." Arya closed her eyes and drew a slow, steady breath, feeling the pulse of the forest around her. She pictured the flame as a part of herself, a heartbeat of light and warmth. The ember grew steadier, glowing brighter, then suddenly burst into a small, controlled flame that hovered just above her palm. Lyric, watching intently from the shadows, allowed a rare smile to slip through his usual guarded expression. "Not bad," he said. "You're learning faster than I expected." Arya opened her eyes, a shy smile blooming despite the exhaustion in her limbs. "I have to be ready," she whispered, "for whatever's coming later, around the campfire." The group gathered in a tight circle, the tension from the night's battle still lingering. Peel spread out a tattered map, its edges worn and stained. "This is Thorned Hollow," he said, pointing to the tangled forest maze. "The heart of the curse lies deeper than we've dared to go. We need to reach the Well of Shadows, the source of the corruption." Lyric's voice was low but sharp. "It won't be easy. The forest will fight back harder, and the hunters won't give up." Arya's gaze flicked between them, determination burning bright. "Then we don't have a choice." As plans took shape, a quiet moment unfolded between Arya and Lyric. He stepped closer, the firelight casting shadows that softened his fierce features. "You're not alone in this," he said quietly. "We're bound by more than just the curse." Arya's breath hitched. The weight of his words settled over her, warmer than the flames she commanded. Cale cleared his throat, breaking the moment with a sharp glance. "Focus," he warned with a smirk. "The forest waits for no one." That night, as Arya lay beneath the stars, her thoughts raced. Memories of her mother, the growing bond with her protectors, and the fire that now felt like both shield and sword. Her destiny was no longer a distant shadow, but a flame she could no longer ignore. And with every flicker, every spark, she grew stronger. Chapter 16, Into the Shadows. The morning. Mist clung to the twisted branches of Thorned Hollow like a shroud, muffling the sounds of footsteps as Arya, KL, and Lyric pressed deeper into the forest heart. Each step carried a weight heavier than the last. A step closer to the Well of Shadows, the source of the curse that clawed at their world. The trees seemed alive, their gnarled limbs twisting toward the sky like desperate hands. Shadows slithered beneath the undergrowth, and the air hummed with an ancient, restless energy. Arya's fingers brushed the pendant around her neck, a small obsidian flame, a relic from her mother. She closed her eyes briefly, drawing strength from the tiny talisman. The fire inside her flickered, responding to her quiet command, ready to ignite but waiting for her control. Kale scanned the perimeter, eyes sharp, sword drawn but held loosely at his side. His silent vigilance was a shield, both for himself and for the others. Lyric moved like a shadow, weaving through the trees with uncanny grace, ever watchful for threats lurking unseen. Suddenly the silence broke. A rustling sound, faint but deliberate, emerged from the thicket ahead. Kale raised a hand, signaling the group to halt. Arya's heart thundered. The fire inside her surged, responding to her fear and adrenaline, but she forced herself to steady her breath, to calm the blaze within. From the underbrush, a figure stepped forward, one of the hunters, face obscured by a dark hood, eyes glinting with malice. "You cannot hide forever, girl of fire," the hunter hissed. "The curse binds you, and soon you will belong to us." Kale stepped forward, blade flashing in the dim light. "We protect her," he said, voice cold as steel. "Turn back or face us." The hunter snarled, drawing a wicked, blade shimmering, with dark energy. Before the first strike could fall, Lyric was upon him, swift and deadly, disarming the foe in a blur of motion. Arya watched, heart pounding, as the hunter struggled, eyes wild with desperation. In that moment, something flickered, an image flashed in Arya's mind. A memory not her own, a woman burning with radiant fire standing against a sea of shadows. The hunter gasped, clutching his head, then collapsed, unconscious. Kale knelt, retrieving a small blackened token from the fallen enemy. "This is a mark of the curse," Kale explained grimly. "They're connected to the well. The corruption runs deeper than we thought." As the group resumed their journey, the forest grew darker, the canopy thickening until only slivers of pale light pierced the gloom. Arya's resolve hardened. The path ahead was dangerous, but she would face it, not just for herself, but for those she loved, and for the promise of a future free from darkness. That night, beneath the cold gaze of the stars, the trio made camp. Kale and Lyric kept watch, their presence a steady reassurance. Arya lay awake, the fire inside her flickering gently, no longer a wild flame but a steady beacon. Her journey was far from over, but with every step, every battle, she grew stronger. The shadows could wait, because Arya was ready. Chapter 17, The Whispering Ruins. The forest gradually thinned, revealing a clearing bathed in the ghostly light of the rising moon. At its center lay the ruins, crumbling stone structures covered in twisting vines and faded glyphs that pulsed faintly with otherworldly energy. Cale's voice was hushed as he stepped forward, tracing the ancient carvings with reverence. This place, it's older than any of us. The Guardians built it long ago to contain the curse. Arya's eyes scanned the symbols, their meaning just beyond her grasp. The air here thrummed with power, a heavy weight pressing against her chest, both oppressive and oddly comforting. As they explored the ruins, a sudden rustle echoed from the shadows. From between two broken pillars emerged a figure, a tall, ethereal woman cloaked in silvery robes that shimmered like moonlight on water. Her eyes glowed faintly, reflecting the stars above. "I am Seraphine," she said, her voice a melodic whisper that seemed to echo from everywhere and nowhere. "A guardian like your mother, though from a different time." Arya's breath caught. Kael stepped forward, wary but respectful. "Why do you linger here, Seraphine?" The woman's gaze softened. "To watch, to wait. The curse festers, but the light of the next guardian has begun to burn again." Seraphine's presence filled the clearing with an eerie calm. She shared stories of the curse's birth, born from a betrayal among the guardians themselves, a rift that let darkness seep into their world. The Well of Shadows was both prison and source, its power corrupting all who drew near. "The curse feeds on fear and doubt," Seraphine warned, "but hope can break its chains." She turned her gaze to Arya. "You carry the flame of balance, but to wield it you must confront your deepest fears and trust those who stand with you." Arya felt a new surge of determination. Seraphine offered a gift, a delicate silver amulet, etched with the same ancient glyphs as the ruins. "This will protect you from the Well's influence," she explained, "but it will not save you from yourself." Lyric stepped closer, nodding in agreement. "We fight together." As the moon climbed higher, the ruins whispered secrets to those who would listen. And beneath the watchful eyes of the Guardians, Arya's journey took a new turn toward hope, courage, and the power to change fate itself. Chapter 18, Trial by Shadow. The first light of dawn barely pierced the dense canopy of thorned hollow as Arya tightened the silver amulet around her neck. The cool metal rested against her skin, its ancient glyphs faintly glowing with a soft blue hue. Hale and Lyric stood nearby, their eyes sharp, scanning the shifting shadows that clung to the trees like dark smoke. "Ready?" Kale asked, voice low but steady. Arya nodded, swallowing the nervous knot in her stomach. "Let's move." The forest seemed alive with whispers, faint voices weaving through the branches, the rustling leaves sounding like distant warnings. As they advanced, the ground suddenly trembled. A swirl of darkness erupted ahead, coalescing into a form, a monstrous shadow beast with glowing red eyes and jagged claws, its presence choking the very air around them. Kale stepped forward, sword raised. "Defend the Guardian." Lyric moved beside Arya, his own power crackling faintly beneath the surface. The shadow beast lunged, and Arya's heart pounded, in rhythm with the threat. She closed her eyes and felt the amulet warm against her chest. Drawing in a steady breath, she focused on the flame inside her, no longer wild but tempered by the amulet's protection. With a cry, she unleashed a burst of pure fire, the flames swirling around her hands like a living storm. The beast recoiled, snarling as the fire seared its dark form. But the shadow was relentless, attacking again with claws like shadows slicing through air. Keel and Lyric fought fiercely, their movements fluid and precise, buying Arya precious seconds. The amulet pulsed brighter, a shield of blue light enveloping her just as the beast's claws grazed her arm. Pain flared, sharp but fleeting. Arya's eyes snapped open, blazing with renewed strength. With a surge, she summoned a pillar of flame that shot upward, engulfing the beast. The creature let out a final anguished roar before dissolving into tendrils of smoke. Breathing heavily, Arya looked to her companions. Kale's approving nod and Lyric's rare, genuine smile filled her with warmth. "The amulet works," Kale said, "but the curse grows stronger. This was only a taste," Lyric added. "You're becoming the guardian you were meant to be." That night, around the flickering campfire, the group shared stories and plans. Arya's mind raced, both exhilarated and exhausted. The path ahead was fraught with danger, but the fire within her burned brighter than ever. She was no longer just the girl bound to the monsters. She was their light, their hope, and she would fight for every flicker of it. Chapter 19. Flames of Doubt. The fire crackled softly in the quiet of their camp, shadows dancing across the trees as Arya sat apart, staring into the glowing embers. The silver amulet pulsed faintly at her throat, a constant reminder of the power now tethered to her very soul. Her hands trembled slightly, the remnants of the battle's adrenaline fading into exhaustion. Yet beneath that fatigue, a deeper turmoil churned. The flames within her were no longer just light or destruction, they were a burden. Chaol noticed her silence and approached, the soft rustle of his steps breaking the stillness. "You're far away," he said gently, sitting beside her. Arya gave a faint smile but didn't look up. "I'm afraid," she admitted. "This power? It's bigger than me. What if I lose control? What if I become the very thing I'm fighting against?" Chaol's eyes softened. "Fear is part of the fight, but you're not alone." Lyric appeared then, settling close with an ease that spoke of trust. "Power is never a curse unless you let it consume you. You have us, and you have yourself." Arya swallowed hard. Their faith in her was a fragile thread holding back the storm inside. The night deepened, and the stars wheeled overhead like distant watchful eyes. Arya's thoughts drifted to Seraphine's words. "You must confront your deepest fears and trust those who stand with you." Could she do that? Could she trust herself? Could she trust them? Chaol reached out, his hand brushing hers lightly. A jolt of warmth surged between them, not just from her flames, but something more. Lyric's gaze lingered a moment longer, a silent promise in his eyes. Arya's heart pounded, caught between fear and hope, darkness and light. "Tomorrow," she whispered, "I'll face the well of shadows." Chaol nodded, resolve hardening in his expression. "We'll be there every step." Lyric's voice was steady together. The fire died down to glowing embers, but the bond between them blazed anew, fragile, fierce, indivapires, and full of promise. Arya closed her eyes, the flame inside her steadying like a heartbeat. She wasn't just bound to monsters. She was becoming their beacon. Chapter 20. Descent to the Well. The first light of dawn seeped through the dense canopy, painting the world in muted gold and deep greens. The forest around them felt alive, each leaf shimmering with dew, each branch humming softly with unseen magic. But beneath this serene beauty lay a weight, an invisible pull that tugged at Arya. Soul, today they would reach the Well of Shadows. The path was narrow, winding downwards like a serpent slithering into the earth. Every step Arya took felt heavier than the last, as if the forest itself was reluctant to let them pass. The air grew cooler, thicker, and a low hum vibrated beneath their feet, a sound that seemed to echo in the marrow of their bones. Chaol walked ahead, his sword sheathed but ready. His expression was unreadable, eyes sharp as he scanned the twisted trees that clawed at the sky. Lyric followed close beside Arya, his presence a quiet shield against the growing darkness. "Are you sure this is the right way?" Arya asked, voice barely more than a whisper. Chaol glanced back, his dark eyes intense. Seraphine's map was clear. The well lies beneath the Forgotten Grove. "We're close." Lyric's gaze flicked to a twisted oak, bark blackened and scarred. "The well's curse seeps into the earth. This is no ordinary forest." Arya shivered, clutching the amulet at her throat. The silver glyphs glowed faintly, pulsing in sync with her heartbeat. The fire within her flickered, wary and uncertain. They had fought shadows before, but nothing like what awaited below. The trees thinned, revealing the edge of a massive chasm, shrouded in swirling mist. A rickety wooden bridge spanned the gap, its ropes frayed, planks creaking under even the gentlest breeze. Chaol stepped forward, testing the first plank. It groaned but held. "After you," he said, nodding toward Arya. Her heart hammered as she stepped onto the bridge. The mist curled beneath like living smoke, and the chasm yawned wide, swallowing sound and light. Halfway across, a sudden gust rocked the bridge violently. Arya stumbled, a cry escaping her lips. Lyric caught her arm, steadying her with a gentle grip. "Steady," he murmured, eyes scanning the fog. Chaol moved beside them, sword drawn now. They reached the other side, breath shallow but spirits unbroken. Ahead lay the Forgotten Grove, trees twisted into grotesque shapes, their leaves black and brittle. The ground was littered with bones, faintly glowing with an eerie blue light. Arya's skin prickled with unease. "Stay alert," Chaol warned. "The Well's guardians won't let us pass easily." No sooner had he spoken than a low growl echoed through the grove. From the shadows emerged creatures unlike any Arya had faced. twisted beasts of bark and bone, eyes burning with malevolent intelligence. They moved as one, circling, waiting. Kale raised his sword. Lyric summoned crackling tendrils of shadow. Arya felt the amulet pulse urgently. Her hands ignited in flames, bright, fierce, but steady. The battle was brutal. Arya unleashed bursts of fire, carving paths through the guardians, but for every beast that fell, two more emerged. Kale's sword sang as it sliced through bark and bone, while Lyric's shadows wrapped and strangled with silent precision. Sweat and ash mixed on Arya's skin. Her flames began to waver, exhaustion threatening to pull. Her under, a massive guardian lunged, jaws snapping mere inches from her face. She dodged, but the creature's claw raked across her arm, burning but not breaking the amulet's protection. Pain shot through her, but she gritted her teeth, focusing on the fire within. With a roar, she summoned a vortex of flames, engulfing the beast in a swirling inferno. It howled before collapsing into smoldering ash. The grove fell silent. Only the crackling of dying embers remained. Arya sank to her knees, breath ragged. KL and Lyric were beside her instantly, concern etched on their faces. "You did well," Kale said softly. The amulet held. Lyric nodded. "But this is only the beginning." Arya's gaze lifted, eyes burning with determination. "We have to find the well." The source of the curse. They pressed onward, descending a narrow stone stairway hidden beneath gnarled roots. The air grew colder, thick with the scent of damp earth, and something darker, decay perhaps, or ancient sorrow. The walls pulsed faintly with that eerie blue light, the glyphs Arya had seen on the amulet now etched into the stone itself. At the bottom, a vast cavern opened before them. In the center, a swirling pool of shadow and light, the Well of Shadows. Its surface shimmered like liquid glass, reflecting twisted images of their deepest fears. Arya stepped forward, heart pounding. Kale and Lyric flanked her, their presence steadying. The well whispered, voices echoing in the darkness. "Face your truth," it seemed to say. Arya's reflection wavered, revealing visions of her mother's fate, of the monsters she feared becoming, of the friends she might lose. A scream tore from her lips as the shadows clawed at her mind. Kale grabbed her arm, grounding her. "Fight it. You're stronger than this." Lyric's voice was a balm. "We're here." Summoning all her courage, Arya closed her eyes, reaching deep inside. The flame inside roared to life, burning away the darkness. When she opened her eyes, the well was still. The curse had been challenged, but not broken. Arya knew their fight was far from over. But with Kale and Lyric by her side, she was ready for whatever came next. Chapter 21. Secrets Unveiled. The heavy silence that followed their escape from the Well of Shadows was almost suffocating. The weight of the cavern's cold darkness clung to them like a second skin, and though they had emerged victorious, the chill of the well seemed to have burrowed deep into their bones. Arya pulled her cloak tighter around herself as they made camp beneath the canopy of ancient trees, their twisted branches silhouetted against the starless night. The forest seemed different now, watchful, as if aware of the battle they'd just endured and the darkness that still lurked beneath the earth. Keel knelt by the dying embers of the fire, sharpening his blade with methodical precision. His jaw was set, eyes distant as though already strategizing their next move. Lyric sat nearby, the shadows around him ebbing and flowing like living smoke, his gaze fixed on the stars piercing the night sky. Arya's hands trembled as she reached for her amulet, its faint glow a reminder of the power she now carried and the dangers it invited. Suddenly a soft rustle interrupted the quiet. From the shadows emerged Seraphine, her long silver hair cascading over her dark cloak, eyes gleaming with secrets that weighed heavy on her delicate features. "You survived," she said simply, voice both relieved and burdened. Arya rose unsteadily to her feet, the tension in her chest tightening. "We did. But the well, it's more dangerous than we imagined. The shadows tried to drown me in my fears." Seraphine nodded, stepping closer, her eyes searching Arya's. "That is the well's curse. It forces you to face the deepest, darkest parts of yourself. Few come out unscathed. But your fire burns brighter than most." Kale's voice cut through the tension, low and serious. "What is this curse, Seraphine? What binds it to the well?" The witch's gaze darkened. "Long ago, a great betrayal fractured this land. A power was sealed deep beneath the earth to contain the darkness that threatened to consume everything. That power is the well. But the curse," she paused, her voice dropping to a whisper, "is a tether to an ancient evil, one that feeds on fear and doubt. It grows stronger with every soul that touches the well. Arya swallowed hard, the enormity of their task settling heavily on her shoulders. How do we break it? Seraphine's eyes flickered with sorrow and resolve. You must find the 3 shards, fragments of the original seal, that were scattered across the realm when the curse was cast. Only by reuniting them can the well be sealed for good. Lyric's voice was sharp. Where do we begin? Seraphine reached into her cloak and produced a small, intricately carved box. She opened it to reveal a shimmering crystal shard pulsing with a soft blue light. This shard lies in the ruins of Eldrath, a place forgotten by time and haunted by restless spirits. Retrieving it will not be easy. Arya's gaze hardened. Then we leave at first light. As Seraphine prepared to depart, she paused, turning back to Arya with a grave expression. There is something else, she said quietly. Your connection to the amulet, it's not just power. It's a bond to the monsters you fight, a link to their very essence. You must learn to control it or risk being consumed by it. Arya's heart raced. The fear she'd been pushing aside surged forward like a tidal wave. Could she really control the darkness within? That night, as the fire's glow flickered low, Arya lay awake, the shard's blue light casting eerie shadows on the trees around her. Hale's steady breathing was a comfort nearby, and Lyric's presence like a shadowed sentinel. Yet deep inside, a battle raged, a war between flame and shadow, hope and fear. She wasn't just fighting monsters anymore. She was fighting herself. Chapter 22, Journey to Eldrath. The first rays of dawn painted the sky with bruised purples and pale golds as Arya tightened her cloak around her shoulders. The shard's soft glow pulsed faintly in the satchel at her side, a silent reminder of the task ahead. Kale stood nearby, checking his gear with practiced precision, while Lyric's shadowy form flickered restlessly beneath the trees. The forest, once ominous and thick with dread, now seemed to watch them with cautious interest, as if sensing the shift in their purpose. We leave before noon, Tale said, voice low but firm. The path to Eldrath is long, and the ruins are dangerous. Arya nodded, trying to steady the nervous flutter in her stomach. Do you think we'll find the other shards quickly? Kale's dark eyes held a flicker of doubt. Nothing about this. Quest is quick or easy. Seraphine's map was old and fragile, its ink faded and edges torn. Yet the routes and landmarks she had marked were unmistakable. The ruins of Eldrath lay beyond the Black Hollow, a cursed valley whispered about in old legends. As they stepped into the forest's edge, the air grew thick with an oppressive silence. No birds sang here, and the wind carried a faint smell of decay. Shadows twisted unnaturally around the gnarled roots beneath their feet. Lyric's eyes narrowed. This place is a trap. The Black Hollow wants to keep its secrets. Suddenly, the ground beneath them trembled. A deep rumble echoed through the valley as cracked stones shifted and ancient trees groaned. Kale drew his sword, muscles coiled like a predator. Prepare yourselves, from the shadows twisted creatures erupted. Malformed beasts with limbs of bark and bone, their eyes glowing like embers in the dim light. Arya's hands flared with fire instinctively. But Kale was faster, cutting a path through the snarling horde. Lyric summoned tendrils of shadow that wove and struck with deadly precision. The battle was fierce, the ground stained with ash and shattered leaves. Arya felt the familiar surge of adrenaline, her flames burning hotter as she fought to protect her friends. But something deeper gnawed at her. The link to the well's darkness pulsed within her amulet, whispering secrets she struggled to ignore. After the last beast fell, the group stood panting, wounds stinging but spirits unbroken. Kale wiped blood from his blade. This was just the beginning. Eldrath holds worse. They pressed onward, crossing a narrow bridge over a rushing river that seemed to glow faintly under the moonlight. The water whispered secrets in a language just beyond comprehension. Arya felt the amulet grow warm against her skin. That night, they camped beneath ancient ruins, crumbling stone pillars etched with symbols of protection and warning. Seraphine appeared from the shadows, her face grave. The ruins of Eldrath are haunted by the spirits of those who failed the curse. They will test your will. Arya swallowed hard, the weight of destiny settling heavy. As the fire flickered low, Arya caught a glimpse of movement, figures drifting silently among the stones, their eyes hollow, voices lost to time. The spirits reached out with icy fingers, probing her mind, dredging memories she had buried deep. A scream tore from her lips as a vision struck, a flash of her mother's sacrifice. The moment she had lost everything, Kale and Lyric rushed to her side, grounding her with strength and shadow. "We're here," Lyric murmured, voice steady. Arya nodded, eyes fierce. I'm ready. The ruins awaited, dark and waiting. Their quest had only just begun. Chapter 23. The Trials of Eldrath. The morning sun struggled to pierce the thick canopy above the ruins, casting long shadows over the crumbling stone pillars and shattered archways. The air was heavy with the scent of moss, damp earth, and something more elusive, a lingering sorrow that clung to the ruins like a ghost. Arya stood at the edge of the clearing, her fingers brushing the smooth surface of the ancient symbols carved into the stones. The shard of the seal pulsed softly in her satchel, a quiet beacon in the growing gloom. Kael surveyed the area, his eyes sharp and alert. These ruins hold more than just spirits, he said grimly. They hold memories, regrets, and pain. We must be ready. Lyric, his form shifting in and out of shadow, nodded. The spirits here won't just test your strength, Arya. They will reach for your heart and soul. A cold wind stirred, whispering through the broken stones like the breath of the forgotten. From the shadows emerged faint, translucent figures, ghostly apparitions, whose faces were etched with sorrow and regret. One stepped forward, eyes locking onto Arya's with an eerie intensity. You who seek the shards, prove your worth, it intoned, voice echoing like a distant bell. Face the truth within, or be lost to the shadows forever. The world around Arya blurred, the ruins fading away as she was drawn into a vision, a memory not her own but vivid and aching with pain. She found herself standing in a sunlit meadow, a young woman weeping over a fallen lover. The scene shifted, revealing the betrayal that had shattered the land so long ago, the breaking of a sacred trust, the unleashing of the curse that now threatened them all. Arya's heart ached with the raw emotion of the vision. She could feel the despair, the rage, the helplessness. It was a burden she hadn't expected, but one she knew she had to bear. Back in the ruins, Kael and Lyric kept watch, their senses sharp for any sign of danger. The spirits circled, their eyes glowing with ancient power. Suddenly, the ground trembled as shadowy tendrils erupted from the earth, twisting and lashing like serpents. Kael moved to defend Arya, his sword flashing through the dark. Lyric summoned shadows to bind the tendrils, his voice low and commanding. Hold them back. Arya clenched her fists, the amulet warming against her skin. She closed her eyes and drew on the fire within, flames flickering to life in her palms. With a cry, she unleashed a burst of light that shattered the shadowy tendrils, sending the spirits recoiling. But the spirits were not defeated. Their leader, a towering figure cloaked in darkness, stepped forward. Your flame is strong, but can you withstand the final trial? It challenged. Arya nodded, determination blazing in her eyes. The spirit raised a hand, and the world shifted again. Arya found herself alone in a vast chamber of mirrors, each reflecting a different version of herself. Fearful, angry, broken, and brave, she faced them all, the whispers of doubt and hope swirling around her. In the silence, she made a choice, not to deny her fears, but to accept them as part of who she was. The mirrors shattered, and the chamber faded. Back in the ruins, the spirits bowed in respect. The leader spoke one final time. You have passed the trials. Take the shard, and may your fire never falter. Arya reached into her satchel and pulled out the glowing shard. It pulsed brighter, as if recognizing her courage. Kael and Lyric stepped forward, relief and pride evident in their eyes. As they prepared to leave Eldrath, Arya felt a new strength within, her a fragile but growing flame that promised hope in the darkness ahead. Chapter 24, Shadows on the Return. The shard of Eldrath pulsed faintly in Arya's satchel as they made their way back through the dense forest. The sky was a deepening canvas of twilight, the horizon bleeding shades of crimson and violet. Despite the victory at the ruins, the air was thick with unease, as if the forest itself held its breath waiting. Kael's steps were silent but purposeful, his gaze scanning every shadow, every rustle. We can't let our guard down, he warned. The darkness we faced is only the beginning. Lyric moved beside Arya, his form shifting with the flicker of fading light. The spirits are restless, they sensed our power and have sent their hunters. A cold chill slithered down Arya's spine. Suddenly, a low growl echoed through the trees. From the shadows, figures emerged, twisted humanoid shapes with eyes like burning coals and claws that scraped against stone. Kael drew his sword with a flash, stepping in front of Arya. Stay behind me. The creatures lunged, their speed unnatural. Arya's flames erupted instinctively, a fierce wall of fire that forced them back. But there were too many. One creature lunged at Lyric, but shadow tendrils wrapped around its limbs, binding it tight. Keep moving, Kale shouted. They sprinted deeper into the forest, branches clawing at their faces and arms. The creatures pursued relentlessly, their snarls growing louder. Arya's breath came in ragged gasps, heart pounding. The weight of the shard was a burning promise, and a terrible burden. Suddenly, the forest opened into a clearing bathed in moonlight, a calm oasis amid chaos. Kale gestured urgently. "This is our chance. Prepare yourselves." Arya felt Lyric's presence close behind as the creatures circled. With a deep breath, she summoned a ring of fire, the flames dancing like wild spirits. Kale and Lyric moved with lethal grace, sword and shadow weaving a deadly dance that drove back the attackers. After what felt like an eternity, silence fell. The creatures had vanished, retreating into the dark. Kale lowered his sword, chest heaving. That was too close. Lyric's eyes met Arya's, a rare softness in his gaze. "You're growing stronger. The well's power flows through you, but control it or it will consume you." Arya nodded, the truth settling heavy. Power was no gift. It was a responsibility she barely understood. As they settled for the night, the tension eased, replaced by quiet conversations and shared glances. Hale spoke low. "We're not just fighting the curse. We're fighting the darkness in ourselves," Lyric added. "And only together can we survive." Arya looked at her companions, fierce, flawed, bound by fate. Her heart stirred with something new, a fragile hope. The journey was far from over. Chapter 25, Threads of the Past. The fire crackled softly, sending shadows dancing across the ancient trees surrounding their small camp. The forest had settled into an uneasy silence after the night's harrowing chase, but the weight of their recent trials lingered in the air, thick and suffocating. Arya sat closest to the fire, the shard of Eldrath resting beside her on a bed of moss. Its pale glow was faint but steady, a reminder of the battle won and the battles yet to come. Kale leaned against a sturdy tree trunk, his sword sheathed but never far from reach. His eyes, dark and stormy, watched the flickering flames as if searching for answers in their chaotic dance. Lyric's shadowed form flickered near the edge of the firelight, his gaze distant, lost in thought. For a long moment, none spoke. Arya finally broke the silence. "We've faced the spirits of Eldrath and survived their trials, but I still don't fully understand the curse. Why does it bind us so tightly?" "Why me?" Kale's eyes flickered to hers, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "It's more than just a curse, Arya. It's a legacy, a story, written in blood and betrayal, far older than you or I." Lyric's voice was quiet but urgent. "The curse didn't start with you, nor with your family. It started long ago when the world was young and the boundaries between our realm and the spirit realm were thin." Arya leaned in, the firelight reflecting in her wide eyes. "Tell me everything." Kale nodded slowly, his tone heavy with the weight of history. "Centuries ago," Kale began, "there was a kingdom called Eldrath, a place of harmony where humans and spirits lived side by side. The rulers were wise, guardians of a powerful seal that kept the balance between the worlds, but..." Lyric interrupted softly. "Power breeds envy." Kale's gaze darkened. A faction of spirits, led by a vengeful entity known as Malrith, sought to shatter the seal and reclaim dominion over the mortal realm. They betrayed the kingdom from within. The betrayal fractured the seal into shards, fragments scattered across the land, each imbued with immense power. The curse was born from that fracture, binding the bloodline of those descended from Eldrath's royal guardians. Arya's heart pounded as she connected the pieces. "So the shards we seek, they're fragments of the original seal." "Exactly," Kale confirmed, "and each shard carries a piece of the curse. To restore balance, we must reclaim them all." Lyric's shadow shifted closer, his voice lowering. "But Malrith still hunts those who seek the shards. He feeds on despair and fear. His power grows with every step we take." A sharp rustle from the bushes snapped their attention. Kale's hand went immediately to his sword, Lyric's form darkening into a protective stance. From the shadows stepped a figure cloaked in a deep emerald robe, face obscured beneath a hood. "Peace," the figure said, voice calm but firm. "I mean you no harm." Arya's fingers tightened around the shard. "Who are you?" she demanded. Voice steady despite the tension. The figure lowered the hood, revealing a woman with striking silver hair and eyes that gleamed like polished obsidian. "My name is Sura," she said. "I'm a keeper of knowledge and a friend." Kale's eyes narrowed. "How do we know we can trust you?" Sura smiled faintly. "Because I, too, am bound by the curse. I've spent decades searching for a way to end it. I believe your journey and mine are intertwined." Arya exchanged a glance with Kale and Lyric. The wariness remained, but something in Sarah's presence felt genuine. She gestured to the fire. "Sit. Tell us everything you know." Sarah lowered herself gracefully beside the flames. "The shards are not just pieces of the seal, they are keys. When united, they can either restore the balance or unleash a power great enough to consume the world." She paused, eyes flickering to Kale and Lyric. "That is why Malrith pursues you, and why you must be cautious. The shards will test you, your resolve, your hearts, your very souls." Arya swallowed hard, the gravity of her quest settling deeper within her. Sarah continued, "There is more. The curse is tied to blood, yes, but also to choice. The Guardians of Eldrath made a pact long ago, one that could be broken only by an act of true sacrifice." Kale's jaw clenched. "A sacrifice we must be ready to make." Lyric's shadow flickered darker, "or one that could destroy us all." The night deepened as Sarah recounted ancient lore, tales of Eldrath's fall, the rise of Malrith, and the fragile hope woven into the shards. As the fire dwindled to embers, Arya felt the weight of destiny settle fully on her shoulders. But alongside the burden was something new, a fierce determination, ignited by the bond she had forged with Kale, Lyric, and now Syrah. The morning light crept through the trees, promising a new day and new challenges. As they prepared to move forward, Arya caught Kale's eye. "We will end this," she said firmly. Kale nodded, a rare softness in his gaze. Together, Lyric's shadow blended with the rising sun. Together, the path ahead was uncertain, shadowed by danger and doubt. But for the first time, Arya believed, not just in the shards or the quest, but in herself and the family she had found. Chapter 26, Echoes of Blood. The sun was still low when they broke camp. The forest wrapped in a fragile golden light that barely touched the shadows beneath the towering oaks. Arya adjusted the strap of her satchel, feeling the weight of the Eldrath shard pressing against her side. It was a cold reminder of the journey ahead, but also of what was behind. Kale moved silently through the undergrowth, ever vigilant, while Lyric's shadow flickered just beyond the firelight's reach. Syrah walked beside them, a steady presence despite the lingering tension. Arya's thoughts drifted back to the stories Sarah had shared the night before, of the ancient kingdom, the shattered seal, and the pact forged in desperation. But there was one tale that clung to her mind, one that Sarah had hinted at but left incomplete. She finally spoke up. "Sarah, you said the curse is tied to choice. What exactly was the sacrifice the Guardians made?" Sarah paused, her expression distant, as if reaching through time itself. "It was not just a pact," Sarah began slowly. "It was a binding of blood, a vow sealed by the very lifeblood of Eldrath's last Guardians. When Malrith betrayed the kingdom, the Guardians chose to bind the seal, fragments to their descendants, sacrificing their freedom to protect the realms." Kale's jaw tightened. Their bloodline became both prison and shield. Lyric's voice was low, almost a whisper, and with that sacrifice, the curse was born, a burden passed down through generations. Arya's fingers brushed the shard again, feeling the faint pulse beneath her skin. "But why you?" she asked, looking at Sarah. "Why did you dedicate your life to this?" Sarah's eyes glistened. "Because I am one of the descendants, too. My family bore the curse silently for centuries, watching as the world shifted and the darkness grew." Her words hung heavy between them. The forest around them seemed to close in, as if holding its breath. Suddenly, the ground beneath their feet trembled, a deep, resonant vibration that pulsed through the trees. Kale drew his sword, eyes sharp. "Something's coming." From the shadows emerged a figure cloaked in black, face hidden beneath a mask carved with ancient runes. The air grew cold, the light dimming as a palpable darkness seeped from the figure's form. Malrith's herald. The figure raised a hand, and the ground cracked open, releasing tendrils of dark mist that snaked toward the group. Arya summoned flames, her heart pounding as she pushed back the shadows. Kale and Lyric moved with practiced precision, their blades slicing through the creeping mist. The battle was fierce but brief. The herald, though powerful, was no match for the trio's combined strength. As the figure fled, a chilling voice echoed through the trees. "This is only the beginning, Arya. Malrith watches, and his patience runs thin." Breathing heavily, Arya looked to her companions. "We're running out of time." Kale nodded grimly. "We need to find the next shard, and fast." That night as they rested, Arya lay awake, the shard's pulse syncing with her own heartbeat. Visions flickered behind her eyelids, glimpses of the past, of the Guardian's sacrifice, and of a future yet unwritten. She realized the true cost of their quest was not just the battles or the curses, but the very essence of their souls. And yet she would fight, For herself, for her family, and for the fragile hope of a world where the curse could finally be broken. Chapter 27. Shadows of the Forgotten. The forest grew denser, the path narrowing beneath a canopy so thick it swallowed the sunlight whole. The air was damp, heavy with the scent of moss and earth, ancient, untouched, and whispering secrets older than memory. Arya led the group cautiously, her fingers brushing the cold surface of the shard nestled inside her satchel. It pulsed faintly, as if alive, guiding her steps with a subtle warmth against the biting chill. According to the map Sarah found, the next shard lies in the ruins of Veradun KL, murmured, scanning the thick tangle of trees. A forgotten city swallowed by the forest centuries ago. Lyric's shadow flickered uneasily at his side. It said that Veradun was once the heart of Eldrath's defenses, a place where the Guardians convened. Sarah nodded solemnly, and where the curse's first blood was spilled. Arya's heart quickened. This was no ordinary quest. The stakes were far deeper, tied to the blood and sacrifice of those who came before. As the group pressed forward, the forest gave way to ruins, crumbling stone pillars wrapped in vines, shattered statues worn smooth by time. The silence was profound, broken only by the crunch of leaves beneath their boots. Kale motioned for them to halt. Ahead, an archway stood partially intact, carved with ancient runes glowing faintly in the dim light. Sarah stepped forward, tracing the symbols with a trembling finger. These runes speak of a ritual one performed to bind the curse to the bloodline. It was meant to protect but also to imprison. Arya knelt, placing her hand on the cold stone. A sudden surge of energy pulsed through her, a wave of memories not her own flooding her mind. She saw a younger woman, fierce and radiant, standing before an altar, blood dripping from her palms as she chanted words in a forgotten tongue. The woman's eyes locked with Arya's, filled with pain, hope, and determination. "The first guardian," Arya whispered, pulling back. Sarah's voice was barely audible. Her name was Alira. She gave herself willingly to contain Malrith's darkness. Kale's gaze darkened, but the curse twisted her sacrifice into chains binding her descendants to an unending fight. The ruins trembled beneath their feet. Suddenly, spectral figures emerged. Ghostly remnants of those long past, their faces etched with sorrow and warning. "Protect the bloodline," one whispered. "Break the seal before darkness consumes all." Another, a guardian clad in ethereal armor, raised a translucent sword, pointing toward the shattered altar. Arya steeled herself. This is our path. The chapter closes with Arya resolving to uncover Alira's fate, and the true power locked within the next shard. Chapter 28. Veil of Whispers. The ruins of Veradun lay cloaked in a thick mist that curled around crumbling stone pillars and shattered statues like ghostly fingers trying to reclaim the earth. The heavy silence was broken only by the faint crunch of leaves beneath their boots and the occasional call of a distant crow, as if the forest itself mourned what had been lost here. Arya stood at the edge of the shattered altar, the Eldrath shard glowing faintly in her hand. Her breath came out in quick, misty puffs, eyes scanning the ethereal blue runes etched deep into the cracked stones. The pulse of the shard synced with the thrum of her heart, a reminder that whatever lay ahead was not only a test of their strength, but of their very souls. Keel shifted beside her, the weight of his presence grounding her. "We don't have much time," he said quietly. "The heralds won't stop coming." And Malrith grows stronger. Lyric, his dark eyes flickering in the mist, stepped forward, his voice barely above a whisper. "This place. It feels alive, as if the walls remember the pain that soaked into the stones." Sarah, ever steady, laid a hand on the altar's edge. "The next shard is bound here, but it won't come freely. The Guardians left a trial, one that will test your heart. Arya." Arya swallowed hard, feeling the weight of expectation settle like a stone in her chest. She had fought demons, faced betrayal, and carried the legacy of a curse she barely understood. But this trial, she sensed, was something more intimate, more personal. The trial begins. The moment Arya placed the shard on the altar, the ground trembled beneath them. The mist thickened, swirling into twisting shapes that formed into ghostly figures, the faces of the ancient guardians, silent watchers of the curse's legacy. One stepped forward, a woman with eyes like burning embers, her voice echoing like a distant storm. "To claim the shard, you must face the Veil of Whispers. Within lies your deepest fears, your darkest secrets. Only by embracing your truth can you break the chains of blood." Arya felt the shard, in her hand, pulse warming against her skin like a heartbeat. She nodded, heart pounding, and stepped into the swirling mist alone. The world shifted. She was no longer in the ruins but standing in a shadowy corridor lined with mirrors that reflected not her face but visions, fragments of memories, moments of pain and doubt, flashes of joy and loss. The whispers began, soft, urgent, sometimes cruel. You are not enough. You are the curse. You will fail. Her breath caught. Each reflection revealed a moment she had tried to bury. The face of her mother, frail and distant, whispering words of disappointment. The memory of the night she first discovered her powers, a blaze of fear and confusion. The haunting image of her father's last words, warnings she never understood until now. Tears stung her eyes, but Arya pressed on, stepping through each mirror, confronting each whispered doubt. Suddenly a figure appeared, a darker reflection of herself, eyes cold and accusing. You hide behind others, it spat. You cling to their strength because you lack your own. Arya clenched her fists. I'm not perfect, she whispered, voice shaking. But I'm not alone, the dark reflection sneered, then dissolved into mist. She found herself in a vast chamber, the air thick with power. The shard floated before her, glowing brighter than ever. But as she reached out, a voice echoed behind her. Do you truly understand the cost of freedom? Arya spun around to see Malrith. Silhouette emerged from the shadows, eyes burning with fury and pain. You carry the blood of the Guardians, he said, stepping closer. But that blood is also your curse. Every choice you make, every bond you form, tightens the chains that bind you. Arya stood firm. I choose to fight, not to be imprisoned by fear. Malrith smiled, cruel and bitter. Then prove it. A sudden burst of energy exploded in the chamber, the air shimmering with raw magic. Arya summoned her fire, Kaeling lyrics, voices echoing in her mind, strength, trust, love. The shard pulsed with light as Arya stepped forward, ready to claim it. Chapter 29, Flames of Reckoning. The chamber still hummed with the aftershock of magic as Arya's fingers closed around the glowing shard. The pulse within it synced with her heartbeat, steady and strong, as if acknowledging her resolve. Around her, the mist that had once obscured the ruins of Eredun began to dissipate, revealing the ancient stone walls etched with the stories of long-forgotten battles and sacrifices. Kael stepped beside her, his usual stoic expression softened by something almost like pride. You did well, he said, his voice low but sincere. Few could have faced the veil and come back whole. Arya glanced at him, a faint smile tugging at the corner of her lips. I had to for all of us. Lyric's shadow flickered from the opposite side, his intense gaze lingering on the shard before finally settling on Arya herself. You carry more than just the blood of the Guardians, he said quietly. You carry their will. Sarah remained near the altar, carefully gathering the dust and fragments of shattered stone. This shard is the key, she said, but there's still much we don't understand about the full extent of the curse. Arya tightened her grip on the shard, feeling its warmth radiate into her palm. Then we'll find out. We have to. Her words were fierce, fueled by a growing fire within her, a fire that was no longer just about survival but about reclaiming a legacy stolen by fear and darkness. A shadow stirs. The return from the trial was far from quiet. As they prepared to leave the ruins, a sudden chill swept through the air, turning the hairs on the back of Arya's neck to ice. Keel's hand moved instinctively to the sword at his side. Something's coming. From the edge of the mist, dark forms emerged, shadows twisted and malformed, their eyes burning with malicious intent. These were Mareth's heralds, relentless sentinels of his growing power, sent to reclaim what had slipped through his fingers. Arya's heart raced. Ready yourselves. Without hesitation, Lyric summoned a blade of shimmering light, the weapon cutting through the shadows like a beacon in the dark. Kael's sword sang through the air, each strike precise and powerful. Sarah unleashed waves of energy, her magic crackling and sparking as she defended their flank. The battle was fierce but swift. The shadows shrieked as they dissipated under their combined assault. But Arya knew this was just the beginning. As the last echo of the fight faded, she looked to her companions, their faces flushed with adrenaline and determination. We can't let our guard down, she said. Mareth will grow stronger. We need allies and answers. Unveiling the past, later that evening, as they camped beneath a canopy of stars, Arya pulled the shard from her satchel once more. Its glow illuminated the dark forest clearing, casting long shadows. Sarah joined her quietly, her eyes reflecting the shard's light. There's something you need to see. From her bag, Sarah produced an ancient tome, its leather cover cracked and worn. She opened it carefully, revealing pages filled with symbols and faded illustrations. This is the Codex of Eldrath, she explained. It's said to hold the knowledge of the original Guardians, The ones who sealed the curse. Arya's fingers traced the delicate script, her mind racing. If we can understand their magic, maybe we can find a way to break the curse completely. Sarah nodded. But the Codex warns that the price for such power is high. It speaks of sacrifices that may test not only your strength but your very soul. Kale appeared at the edge of the clearing, his silhouette framed by the flickering campfire. Then we must be prepared, he said, because the battle ahead will demand everything we have. Lyric settled beside Arya, his gaze steady and unwavering. We face it together. Bonds forged in fire. As the fire crackled between them, Arya felt a quiet warmth not from the flames, but from the presence of her companions. In a world filled with shadows and curses, they were her light, each carrying their own burdens, their own scars, yet standing beside her as equals and protectors. Kale's voice broke the silence. There's something I've been meaning to tell you. Arya looked up, curious. It's about the curse, and why I've been so invested in this fight. He hesitated, then continued. My family was once among the Guardians. I carry their legacy and their guilt. Lyric's dark eyes softened. We all have parts of our past we can't escape. Arya took a deep breath. Then we face it. All of it, head on. No secrets. They exchanged looks, an unspoken pact sealed under the starry sky. The path forward. Warning light spilled through the trees, casting the forest in hues of gold and green. The shard's glow dimmed as it absorbed the dawn. But Arya's resolve only grew stronger. We move toward the next shard, she said firmly. But we need to be smarter, stronger. We can't afford mistakes. Sarah folded the codex carefully. A place the sanctuary of shadows. It's said to be a repository of guardian knowledge. If we can find it, we might unlock secrets that even Malrith fears. Kale sheathed his sword, determination burning in his eyes. Then, that's where we go. Lyric's voice was a low promise, and whatever awaits us there, we face it together. As they broke camp, Arya glanced once more at the shard glowing softly in her palm. The path ahead was uncertain and fraught with danger, but she knew this much. The curse might have bound their blood, but it could never bind their will. Chapter 30. Sanctuary of Shadows. The forest thickened as they pressed onward, each step pulling them deeper into the unknown. The sun had long dipped below the horizon, swallowed by a horizon that bled into night. Moonlight filtered softly through the canopy, casting an ethereal glow that made the twisted branches seem almost alive, shadows crawling, twisting like fingers reaching toward them. Arya led the way, the shard clasped tightly in her palm. A gentle pulse was a steady heartbeat in the quiet, guiding them like a beacon through the maze of ancient trees. The others flanked her, Kegel on the left, his sword sheathed but ready. Lyric on the right, his eyes sharp in the dark. And Sarah bringing up the rear, her hands occasionally flickering with soft blue sparks of magic, illuminating the path and warding off lurking threats. The weight of silence, they moved in silence for miles. The only sounds their careful footsteps and the distant hoot of an owl. The tension between them was palpable but unspoken. The memory of the recent battle with Malrith's shadow heralds hanging thick in the air like a suffocating fog. Kale finally broke the silence, his voice low but carrying an edge of resolve. The sanctuary is real. My grandfather spoke of it, a place where the Guardians once convened, a vault for their knowledge and power. Arya nodded, her gaze fixed ahead. If we can unlock what's hidden there, maybe we'll find the means to end the curse. Lyric's eyes gleamed faintly. But the sanctuary isn't unguarded. Legans say it's protected by ancient spells and something else. Sarah's voice was barely a whisper, but it sent a chill down Arya's spine. There are beings who have remained behind the veil for centuries, guardians, yes, but corrupted by their isolation. We must be careful. Arya tightened her grip on the shard. Then we'll face whatever comes. A hollow clearing. After hours of trekking, the forest suddenly opened into a vast clearing. The moonlight bathed a circular stone structure at its center, worn by time but still unmistakably formidable. Vines clung to its weathered pillars, and the faintest hum of dormant magic thrummed in the air. This is it, Sarah said reverently. The sanctuary of shadows. The air grew heavier, thicker, as if the very atmosphere were charged with ancient power. Arya stepped forward, feeling the shard's pulse quicken. In her palm, Kale scanned the perimeter warily. We're not alone. A subtle rustling came from the tree line, and figures emerged, silent and still. They were clad in armor blackened by age, their faces hidden beneath helmets shaped like snarling beasts. Their weapons glinted faintly in the moonlight. Spears tipped with crystal that shimmered like the shard itself. Guardians, Lyric said. Eyes narrowed. But not the kind we expected. The trial of worth. Lone stepped forward, lowering his spear with a voice like gravel. You who seek the sanctuary must prove your worth. The curse's blood in your veins is both your right and your burden, but only the worthy shall enter. Arya lifted the shard, letting it glow brighter. We seek to break the curse, to restore balance. The Guardian's helmet tilted as if appraising her. Then face the trial. Survive, and the sanctuary. Secrets are yours, without warning. The clearing shifted. Shadows coalesced into towering figures twisting and snarling with feral energy. The Guardians moved as one, flanking Arya and her companions as the trial began. The battle within, Arya's heart pounded as she dodged and struck, the shard's energy flaring in her hand. Each shadow beast she felled seemed to split into smaller, sharper fragments that lunged at her like shards of broken glass. Kael's sword sang with every swing, cutting through the darkness with deadly precision. Lyric's blades danced like firelight, carving paths through the onslaught, while Sarah wove protective spells, shimmering shields that absorbed strikes and healed wounds. But the trial was relentless. For every shadow defeated, two more rose. The air filled with the scent of ozone and the sharp tang of sweat and blood. Arya felt exhaustion clawing at her, but the shard pulsed stronger with each act of courage, a tether pulling her forward. Suddenly the ground beneath her cracked open, revealing a pit of swirling darkness. Arya stumbled, barely catching herself on a fallen pillar. The shadows surged, relentless and closing in. A moment of revelation. In that desperate moment, the shard flared wildly, flooding her vision with light, blinding, pure and searing. Images exploded behind her eyelids. Fragments of Guardian memories, battles long past, faces she could almost recognize but not fully place. A voice echoed, deep, ancient, and resonant. You carry the legacy, the power, but will you wield it with courage or let it consume you? Arya's breath caught in her throat. She forced herself to focus, grounding her mind against the tempest of images. The shard's warmth steadied, and with a surge of will, she extended her hand. Light spilled from the shard like molten silver, wrapping the shadows in its glow. They screamed and dissipated, melting back into the void. The Guardians lowered their weapons, silent and still once more, the Guardian's blessing. The leader approached, helmet raised, revealing weathered but kind eyes beneath. You have passed, he said simply. The sanctuary welcomes you. The chamber doors opened, revealing a vast hall lined with scrolls, relics, and pulsing crystals, a vault of lost knowledge and power. Arya stepped inside, feeling the weight of centuries pressing around her. Kael spoke softly. This is just the beginning. Lyric's gaze was fierce. The real fight is still ahead. Sarah's fingers traced the edge of an ancient tome. But now we have a chance. Arya looked down at the shard, now glowing steadily in her hand. We'll break the curse, together. Chapter 31. Echoes of Forgotten Power. The heavy stone doors groaned shut behind them, sealing out the cold night and the ancient forest's watchful eyes. Inside the sanctuary of shadows, the air was thick with the scent of dust, old parchment, and the faint, metallic tang of latent magic. Faint blue light pulsed from crystals embedded in the vaulted ceiling, bathing the grand hall in an otherworldly glow that shifted and shimmered like water. Arya stepped cautiously forward, her heart pounding with a cocktail of awe and dread. The shard in her hand throbbed gently, a steady reminder of the impossible path they had just taken. The heavy silence was broken only by their quiet footsteps echoing against the stone floor. Kael's voice, low and serious, sliced through the quiet. This place, it's more than just a vault. It's a memory. Lyric's eyes scanned the towering shelves lined with scrolls and ancient tomes, his fingers twitching at the sheathed daggers strapped to his waist. And that memory might hold the key to everything we need if we can read it. Sarah moved with reverence, trailing her fingers lightly over an ornate pedestal where a glowing orb hovered midair, humming softly. The Guardians kept everything here, knowledge, power, and warnings, but also secrets best left forgotten, the Hall of Relics. The group fanned out cautiously, each drawn to different relics scattered throughout the sanctuary. Arya's gaze was drawn to a large mural stretching across the far wall. The painting was faded but still vibrant, a tapestry of intertwined fates, humans, monsters, and ethereal beings bound together in a dance of light and shadow. Her fingers traced the intricate symbols carved into the mural's frame. Suddenly the shard pulsed fiercely, and the symbols shimmered with newfound life. Images flickered, flashes of battles, alliances, betrayals, a history long buried beneath layers of myth. Kael stepped closer, eyes narrowing. This is the story of the first curse, isn't it? The war between our ancestors and the monsters, and how the guardians sealed the darkness away. Arya swallowed hard, overwhelmed. But if it was sealed, why is the curse still spreading? Lyric's lips twisted in a bitter smile, because the seal was never meant to last forever. It needed a keeper, someone with the curse's blood to maintain it. Sarah's eyes locked with Arya's, her voice trembling. And now that keeper is failing. Whispers from the past, drawn to a pedestal at the center of the hall. Arya discovered a scroll bound with silver thread, glowing faintly. She unrolled it carefully, revealing an elegant script in a language she instinctively understood. The words told of the Guardian's last stand of a ritual to bind the curse's power into a single vessel, but at a cost. A chill ran down her spine as she read the final passage. Only the blood of the cursed may wield the binding flame, but it will consume the bearer soul unless the heart remains pure. Kale's hand rested on her shoulder. You were right to keep the shard. It's a piece of that binding flame. Arya looked at the shard, suddenly feeling its weight, not just physical but spiritual. Then I have to control it or it will destroy me, Lyric approached with a grim expression. You won't be alone in this. We'll fight by your side. The sanctuary's guardians, as if summoned by their resolve, the armored guardians from outside reappeared in the shadows, their presence a silent reminder that the trial was far from over. One stepped forward, this time without his helmet, revealing a lined, weathered face marked by battle and wisdom. I am Arendor, he said, voice heavy with age and responsibility. The sanctuary's last sentinel. You have proven worthy to enter, but the curse's true challenge awaits deeper within. Arya's pulse quickened. What must we do? Arendor's gaze was steady. So within this sanctuary lies the heart of the curse, the source of its power and pain. To end the curse, you must confront it. But beware, it will test not just your strength, but your spirit. Sarah stepped forward, her fingers sparking softly. We must prepare. This isn't just a battle of swords and spells, it's a battle for your very soul, Arya. The descent, a narrow staircase spiraled down from the hall's center, carved directly into the stone, worn smooth by centuries of footsteps long vanished. Arya, Kael, Lyric, and Sarah descended cautiously, the temperature dropping with each step. The shard's glow illuminated the darkness, flickering shadows against the walls. The air grew thick with an oppressive energy, heavy and suffocating. Spurs echoed faintly around them. Voices from the past carried on a cold wind. Suddenly the tunnel opened into a cavernous chamber. At its heart lay a pool of black liquid, rippling as if alive, reflecting the flickering blue light of crystals embedded in the ceiling. The surface shimmered, swirling with shadows and flickers of distant memories. The heart of the curse, Arendor whispered from behind them. Arya stepped closer, feeling the shard's pulse quicken in response to the darkness below. Facing the darkness, the pool stirred, and from its depths emerged a figure, a shadowy specter with glowing red eyes, its form constantly shifting between something human and something monstrous. Its voice echoed inside their minds, cold and mocking. You bear the curse's blood, it said. Do you think you can break me? I am the shadow in your veins, the hunger that never fades. Arya raised the shard, its light cutting through the darkness. I don't just bear your curse. I will end it, the specter laughed, a sound like shattering glass. Then prove it. Show me your heart, trial of the soul. The chamber dissolved around them. Arya found herself standing alone in a vast, empty void. Around her, visions flickered. Memories of loss, fear. Anger, the darkness feeding on her doubt. She saw faces she loved, moments she feared losing. But among the shadows, a small flame glimmered, the shard in her hand, a beacon of hope. She focused, drawing strength from the warmth of her friends' voices echoing in her mind. I am more than this curse. I am more than fear. Light exploded from the shard, engulfing the darkness. Arya felt the pain of the curse clawing at her soul but pushed forward, her resolve burning brighter than ever. When the light faded, the specter was gone. The chamber was still. New dawn. Arendor's voice broke the silence. You have faced the curse's heart and not faltered. That is rare and powerful. Arya looked at the shard, now glowing steadily with a calm light. What happens now? The curse is not broken, Arendor said quietly, but it is weakened. You have the power to seal it for a time. Kael placed a hand on Arya's shoulder. You won't have to do this alone. Lyric nodded. We fight with you, always. Sarah smiled softly, her hand still glowing faintly. The path is long, but for the first time it feels possible. Arya breathed deeply, feeling a flicker of hope she hadn't known she needed. The road ahead was uncertain and dangerous, but now they had a chance. Together. Chapter 32. The Gathering Storm. The calm after the trial was deceptive. Arya stood at the edge of the sanctuary. Cavernous chamber, the shard glowing softly in her palm. The heavy weight of their victory was tempered by the unshakable truth. Whispered by Erendor's words, the curse was weakened, not broken. Outside, the Guardians stood watch, their armor gleaming faintly under the crystal light. Keel, Lyric, and Sarah gathered close, their faces a mixture of exhaustion and fierce determination. This moment of respite was fragile, a quiet lull before the storm. Plans in the shadows. Back in the grand hall, the group convened around a large stone table, carved with intricate runes and ancient maps. Erendor spread a faded parchment before them. Its edges curled with age, but the markings unmistakably clear. Territories marked with sigils of power, known hunting grounds of monsters, and locations of other sanctuaries long forgotten. The curses reaches far, Erendor said, pointing at the map. This is only one of many seals placed by the Guardians centuries ago. Each holds a piece of the curse, essence, bound to places of power. Arya traced a trembling finger over the parchment. If one seal weakens, the curse grows stronger elsewhere. Yes, the seals are interconnected. When one falters, others suffer. If we fail to restore balance, the curse will consume the world. Kael's jaw tightened. So we need to find the other seals, protect them, or risk losing everything. Sura's eyes flickered with resolve. And what about the monsters? We can't just fight the curse without understanding those who carry it. Lyric nodded thoughtfully. We need allies. If we're to face this on all fronts, we need every hand willing to stand with us, monster and human alike. The Pact of Shadows. A heavy silence fell before Arya spoke. We need a plan that bridges both worlds. Erendor's gaze hardened. The old alliances were shattered long ago. Monsters and humans turned against each other. But the curse doesn't discriminate. It devours us all. Kael leaned in. Then it's time to mend the past, to build a new alliance, one strong enough to stand against the rising darkness. Sarah's magic flared subtly, illuminating the rune-covered table. We must reach out to the monster clans, to the hidden enclaves of magic users, to anyone who fears the curse. Arya swallowed her doubt. But some will never trust us. Lyric cracked a rare smile. We don't have the luxury of waiting for trust to grow. We have to show them why it matters. A call across worlds. That night, under the fractured light of the moon, the group prepared to send the first call. Arya stood in the heart of the sanctuary. The shard held high. Zara began weaving a complex spell, her hands tracing arcs of light that shimmered like ribbons in the air. The runes beneath their feet glowed to life, humming in resonance with the shard's pulse. The spell was, ancient, a beacon, a summons to those who still walked the fragile line between monster and human. Keel, Lyric, and Sarah formed a protective circle around Arya, their combined power amplifying the signal. The air thickened. Shadows stretched and twisted. The sanctuary seemed to breathe, awakening from its long slumber. Far beyond the forest, eyes flickered open, some human, some not. First responses. The following days were a whirlwind. Messengers arrived at the sanctuary's gates, wary, guarded, but curious. A sleek, lithe figure clad in leather and bone appeared first. She introduced herself as Malus, a werewolf from the northern packs. I heard your call, Malus said, eyes sharp but respectful. The curse is spreading. Our kin suffer, and so do the lands. Next came Torin, a towering stone-skinned giant whose footsteps shook the ground. The seals weaken. We cannot stand idle. And then, a shadow that moved without sound, a vampire named Nyx, whose cold smile promised power but whose eyes held secrets. Arya studied each newcomer carefully. These were powerful beings, but also dangerous. Trust would not come easily. Tensions and trials. In the days that followed, the sanctuary became a meeting ground for the uneasy alliance. Arguments flared, fueled by centuries of mistrust and scars of old wounds. The werewolves distrusted the vampires, the giants saw humans as fragile and reckless. Arya often found herself mediating heated debates, trying to keep their shared purpose from unraveling. One night, a confrontation exploded in the Grand Hall. Nyx accused Kael of past atrocities against her kind. Kael's voice grew cold. Your kind have fed on humans for centuries. Don't pretend you're innocent. The room erupted in chaos until Sarah's voice rang out, commanding silence. We all have sins, but we cannot let old grudges doom us now, she said firmly. If we do, the curse will win. Arya stepped forward, her voice steady despite the tension. We don't have to erase the past, but we have to choose the future. Uneasy bonds. The weeks blurred as the group forged their alliance. Training sessions in the sanctuary. as ancient chambers honed their abilities, blending human magic with monster strength. Arya's control over the shard grew stronger, her bond with her companions deepening. Late nights found them sharing stories around firelight, tales of battles fought and lost, of love and betrayal, of hopes kindled in the darkest times. In the quiet moments, Arya felt the weight of leadership settle on her shoulders. The shard pulsed with growing intensity, as if sensing the rising storm. Kael's steady presence was a balm, Lyric's wit a shield, and Sarah's magic a light in the shadows. Yet beneath the camaraderie, a storm brewed, whispers of betrayal. One evening, as the sanctuary slept, Arya awoke to a chilling silence. The shard was cold in her hand. Footsteps echoed softly in the corridor outside her chamber. She slipped from her bed, heart pounding, and followed the sound to the vast library. There, hidden in shadow, she caught a glimpse of a familiar figure in Meeks. The vampire's eyes gleamed with something darker than the night itself. "You think you can control the shard?" Nyx's voice was a whisper, dripping with venom. "You don't understand its true power." Arya stepped forward, voice firm. "It's not a weapon to be wielded recklessly." Nyx smiled, cold and cruel. "Power is never reckless, it's survival." Before Arya could react, Nyx vanished into the darkness, leaving behind a trail of icy menace. A new resolve, the betrayal shattered the fragile peace. Arya returned to her companions, the shard warm once more, but the weight of Nyx's words heavy in her mind. "We must be vigilant," Kael warned. "Not everyone here is our ally." Sarah's eyes burned with fierce determination. "If Nyx seeks the shard, she fears what we can become together." Lyric's grin was sharp. "Then we'll show her exactly what that means." Arya nodded, the fire of resolve igniting within her. The curse had weakened, but the true battle was only beginning. They were not just fighting monsters, they were fighting the darkness within themselves and the world, and together they would face the gathering storm. Chapter 33, Shadows Within the Sanctuary. The cold whisper of betrayal lingered in the sanctuary like a ghost. Arya sat at the edge of the ancient pool in the heart of the sanctuary, the shard resting on the stone beside her. Its glow was dimmer than usual, flickering as if uncertain, reflecting her own wavering thoughts. Nyx's shadow had darkened the fragile alliance they'd built, and the question gnawed at her relentlessly. How many others shared the vampire's secrets? Dawn in turmoil. Morning light spilled through the crystalline walls, scattering prisms of color over the gathered group. Around the great table, Kael, Sarah, Lyric, and Maelis debated the next course of action. The mood was heavy, edged with suspicion. Kael's voice cut through the murmurs. "Nyx's betrayal changes everything. We cannot trust blindly anymore." Maelis, her wolfish eyes narrowed, growled softly. "Her kind have long lived in shadows. We must be prepared for others to follow." Lyric's usual smirk was gone, replaced with grim resolve. "Then we hunt. We root out the traitors before they can strike again." Zara nodded, agreed, "but we cannot fracture this alliance. It is all that stands between us and the curse." Arya's gaze shifted between them, feeling the weight of her role. "We will confront this as one, but we need more information, and quickly." Secrets of the library. The sanctuary's library was a labyrinth of knowledge, dusty tomes, scrolls, and relics from 1,000 forgotten ages. Arya, Sarah, and Maelis pored over texts, seeking anything that might illuminate Nyx's intentions. Hours passed as Arya's fingers traced faded runes and cryptic symbols. "There must be a way to shield the shard from those who seek to control it," she murmured. Sarah's eyes glowed softly. "I found a reference to a binding ritual, one that can lock the shard's power to its true bearer, preventing misuse." Maelis leaned in, intrigued. "But such rituals come with great risk." "Exactly," Sarah replied, her voice serious. "The binding requires sacrifice, a part of your essence. And if it fails, the shard could be lost forever." Arya swallowed hard. The idea of binding the shard terrified her, yet the alternative was worse. "We don't have a choice," she said firmly. "If Nyx gains control, it could mean the end." Whispers in the night. That night, Arya stood watch in the sanctuary. Outer courtyard. The forest's dark embrace surrounded them, alive with distant sounds, hooting owls, rustling leaves, and the faint drip of unseen water. Her breath clouded the air as she clutched the shard, its pulse steady against her palm. From the shadows emerged a figure, Torin the giant, his stone-like skin seemed to shimmer under the moonlight. "I thought you might need company," he said quietly. Arya smiled faintly. "Thank you." Torin, he hesitated, then asked, "Do you ever wonder if we're making a difference? If the curse can truly be broken?" She considered him, her heart heavy with doubt. I have to believe it. Otherwise, why keep fighting? Torn nodded slowly. Then we fight on for those who cannot. A rift forms. The following days brought more tension than peace. Nick's absence was palpable. Her shadowy presence felt like a wound that refused to heal. Kael gathered the group again. We cannot wait for her to strike first. Malus stepped forward. I propose a search party to track her movements, to prevent her from rallying others to her cause. Lyric smirked. Sounds like a hunting trip. Count me in. Arya agreed reluctantly, but we moved carefully, no unnecessary bloodshed. The party formed quickly. Kael, Malus, Lyric and Arya herself. Sarah stayed behind to prepare the binding ritual, the last hope to protect the shard, tracking the vampire. The hunt led them deep into the cursed forest beyond the sanctuary's boundaries. The air grew colder, the shadows longer. Stranga sounds echoed, growls, whispers, footsteps not quite human. Arya felt the shard pulse faintly, as if guiding them. Maelis's senses were sharp. She's close. I can smell her. Suddenly the trees parted, revealing a clearing bathed in moonlight. At its center, Iniq stood, her eyes glowing red, flanked by figures draped in darkness. Loyal followers drawn to her power. Welcome, Iniq purred. I wondered when you'd come. Kael stepped forward, sword drawn. This ends now, Nyx. Nyx laughed, cold and cruel. You think you can stop what's already begun? The curse is stronger than any of you imagine. Battle in the moonlight. The clearing erupted into chaos. Shadows clashed with steel, magic flared like lightning across the night sky. Arya summoned the shard's power, beams of light shooting toward their foes. Keel's sword sliced through shadowy figures, while Melis, transformed, her wolf form tearing through enemy ranks. Lyric's magic crackled, weaving barriers and blasts of energy. But Nyx was no ordinary foe. Her speed was terrifying, her claws like razors. She seemed to dance through the fight, striking with deadly precision. At one moment, Nyx lunged at Arya. Fangs bared, the shard flared in her hand, and Arya unleashed a blast that sent the vampire sprawling. Nyx's eyes burned with rage. This is only the beginning, aftermath and resolve, the battle ended with. Nyx's retreat, her forces scattered. The group stood breathless, wounds aching but spirits unbroken. Arya knelt beside the shard, feeling its warmth return. Kael clapped her shoulder. You did well. Sarah appeared at the clearing's edge, holding a scroll inscribed with glowing runes. It's time, she said softly. The binding ritual, the binding. Back in the sanctuary, the atmosphere was thick with tension. The ritual required silence and focus. Arya sat at the center of the circle, shard in hand. Sarah chanted ancient words, her magic weaving around Arya, linking her essence to the shard. The air shimmered, the shard glowing brighter than ever. Pain flared as Arya felt parts of herself intertwining with the shard's power. But the bond was forming, solid, unbreakable. When the ritual ended, the shard pulsed gently, now attuned to Arya alone. Nyx's threat still hung in the air, but Arya felt stronger, more certain. The curse was far from defeated. But for the first time, Arya held the power to face it and protect those she loved. Chapter 34. Echoes of the Past. The ritual had sealed the shard's power to Arya, binding them in a way that was both exhilarating and terrifying. The warmth of the shard nestled against her chest was a constant reminder of the price she'd paid and the burden she now carried. But even as the glow settled into a steady pulse, the shadows lurking in the sanctuary whispered secrets from the past, secrets that refused to stay buried. Dawn's quiet unease. The morning after the binding ritual was unusually still. Even the birds outside the sanctuary seemed to hold their breath. Arya sat alone by the pool, her reflection wavering on the surface. The shard glimmered faintly in her palm. Torrin approached quietly, his usual stoic presence grounding her. You carry a heavy weight, he said gently. Arya nodded, staring into the water. I feel changed. The shard's power is part of me now. He sat beside her, massive and silent for a moment. That power is both a gift and a curse. She gave a bitter smile. At times, it feels like more curse than gift. Torrin's gaze turned distant. The shard has a history, one that few know to what. To truly control it, you must understand where it came from. A forgotten history. Later that day, Arya gathered the others in the sanctuary's library. Ancient scrolls and faded manuscripts covered the tables, waiting to be uncovered. Sarah lit candles, casting flickering shadows over the pages. The shard was forged during the War of Shadows, she began. Long before our time, when monsters and humans fought for control of the world. Kael leaned forward. Why was it created? Sarah's eyes glimmered. To contain the curse, to trap its power in a single object, so no one being could wield it alone, Lyric added. But as with all powerful objects, it corrupted those who sought it. Malus growled softly. The curse feeds on greed and fear. The shard was meant to keep that hunger in check. Arya traced her fingers over the text. Then why is it so dangerous now? Sarah's expression darkened. Because the curse is evolving. The shard's power can either protect or destroy. Shadows in the sanctuary. As the day wore on, an unsettling feeling grew within Arya. That night, restless and unable to sleep, she wandered the halls of the sanctuary. The ancient stones seemed to hum with quiet energy. Suddenly a faint whisper drifted through the air, a voice she barely recognized. Arya, she froze. The voice was soft, almost tender yet filled with sorrow. Who's there? She called. Heart pounding. No answer. She followed the sound, footsteps echoing in the dark corridors until she reached the oldest chamber in the sanctuary. The Vault of Ancients. The heavy door creaked open as if inviting her in. Inside, the room was lined with relics and mirrors, each reflecting fragments of forgotten times. In the center, a shimmering apparition flickered to life, a woman cloaked, in silver eyes full of ancient pain. I am Lysara, the spirit whispered, once guardian of the shard, now a prisoner of its curse. Arya's breath caught. What do you want from me? Lysara's gaze pierced through her. To warn you. The curse will not rest until it consumes all. And those bound to the shard must be ready to sacrifice everything. Secrets revealed. Over the next hours, Lysara revealed the shard's origins and the toll it had taken on its previous bearers. The power binds not just the wielder's strength but their soul. It tests their will, their heart, and their resolve. Arya felt a chill as the spirit's words sank in. I don't know if I'm strong enough. You are stronger than you realize, Lysara assured her. But strength alone will not be enough. The spirit reached out, touching Arya's forehead lightly. Visions flooded her mind, battles lost and won, sacrifices made, and a warning etched into time. The curse thrives on isolation and fear. Do not face this alone, Lysara urged. Trust those who stand with you. Ties that bind. The next morning, Arya called a meeting with Kale, Sarah, Lyric, Malus, and Torin. She shared Lysara's warning, her voice steady but urgent. The shard's power comes with a price. It will test me, test us all. Kale clenched his fists. Then we stand together, no matter what. Sarah nodded. We must deepen our bond, share our strengths. Lyric's smirk returned, softer this time. Guess I'm stuck with you, Arya. Malus grinned wolfishly. They're more than allies. We're family. Torin's voice rumbled like distant thunder. And family fights for each other. Arya's heart swelled with gratitude. The curse might be powerful, but so was the connection between them, a moment of peace. That evening, beneath a sky full of stars, Arya found herself drawn to the sanctuary's rooftop. Kale joined her quietly, the city's lights shimmering below them. They stood in silence for a moment, the weight of everything pressing down. The curse, the shard, Naxa's betrayal. Kale broke the silence. You're carrying the world on your shoulders. Arya smiled faintly. I don't want to fail, you won't, he promised, because you're not alone. Their hands brushed, fingers intertwining. In that fragile moment, the shadows seemed to recede. For the first time in a long while, hope flickered like a candle in the dark. But darkness lurks, unknown to them, deep beneath the sanctuary. Nyx's eyes burned with renewed fury. Her plan was far from over, and the curse's true nightmare had only just begun. Chapter 35, The Veil Unravels. The dawn broke cold and gray over the sanctuary, its stone walls standing silent against the creeping chill that settled like a warning in the air. Arya awoke slowly, the shard's faint glow pulsing steadily beneath her pillow, a quiet heartbeat of power tethered to her own. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but the visions from Lysara lingered, vivid and haunting, like a shadow stalking the edges of her mind. The curse was evolving, growing stronger, more relentless. And Nyx's betrayal was far from over. Morning at the sanctuary, Arya rose quietly, careful not to wake the others. The weight of responsibility bore down on her chest, heavier than the shard itself. As she crossed the hall toward the library, her footsteps echoed softly against the ancient floor. She found Sarah already there, poring over scrolls and tomes that crackled with age. You're up early, Arya said softly. Sarah glanced up, eyes bright despite the exhaustion. I couldn't sleep. There's too much we still don't understand about the curse. Arya nodded, sitting beside her. Lysara said, It thrives on isolation. We need to stick together. All of us. Sarah smiled faintly. Good. Because the curse feeds on fear and doubt. We can't let it win. A new threat emerges. Kale and Torin entered, their presence commanding the room with silent intensity. Kale's jaw was clenched, and his usual confident smirk was gone. I intercepted a message last night. Nyx isn't hiding anymore, she's gathering allies. Torin's dark eyes flickered with concern. Monsters from the eastern clans, bloodthirsty and loyal only to Nyx. Arya's heart tightened. How many more than we expected? Kale said grimly. Enough to launch a full assault. The room fell into a heavy silence. Every breath felt like the calm before the storm. Sura broke it. We need to prepare. Fortify the sanctuary, train harder, and find any weaknesses in Nyx's new army. Lyric appeared at the doorway, his expression unreadable. And what about the shard? It's tied to you, Arya. Can it help? Arya looked down at the glowing gem hidden beneath her cloak. I'm still learning to control it, but I'll do whatever it takes. Training in the shadows, the next hours were a blur of motion and sound. Arya pushed herself harder than ever before. Torin coached her on controlling the shard's energy, channeling it without letting it overwhelm her. Kale sparred with her, each strike and parry sharpening their bond, a dance of trust and challenge. Sura taught defensive spells and ancient wards, her hands glowing with arcane light as she demonstrated. Lyric prowled like a shadow, always just out of reach, his sharp grin encouraging and teasing. Maelys watched quietly, her wolfish eyes gleaming with approval. You're getting stronger, but even as they trained, Arya's mind kept drifting to the vault of ancients to Lysara's warnings. A whisper from the past. That night, unable to sleep, Arya returned to the vault. The room was colder than before, the air thick with forgotten memories. She approached the mirrors, each reflecting a fragment of history, battles, sacrifices, and faces blurred by time. Suddenly, the apparition of Lysara appeared again, hair silver, cloak shimmering like mist. Arya, Lysara's voice was soft, urgent. There is more you must know. Arya stepped closer. Tell me. Lysara reached out, her hand passing through the air toward Arya's chest. The curse was born from betrayal, she said. From those who sought to wield power for selfish gain. The shard binds those sins and the pain of its victims. Arya swallowed hard, so Nyx. She's part of that curse. Yes, Lysara confirmed. She is both a victim and a vessel. The curse twists her heart, feeding on her anger and pain. Arya's hands trembled. Can she be saved? The spirit's eyes glowed with sadness. Only if you can reach the part of her still human. The weight of mercy. As Lysara faded into the shadows, Arya was left alone with a storm of emotions. The shard's glow warmed her palm, but inside, a cold question gnawed at her. Could she truly save Nyx, or was she doomed to fight a shadow that would never relent? Her thoughts were interrupted by a soft knock. Kale stepped in, concern etched on his face. Arya, are you all right? She forced a small smile. Trying. He sat beside her, eyes searching. You don't have to carry this alone. Arya nodded, the truth settling deep inside her. She needed her allies now more than ever, unseen eyes. Meanwhile, beyond the sanctuary's walls, Nyx paced in the depths of an ancient cavern. Her eyes burned with fury and desperation. The shards of her own shattered soul were scattered across the land, but her determination remained unbroken. She raised her voice, summoning her new army. Tonight, we strike back. We take what is ours. The shard's power will be mine, and with it, I will end this curse. Her followers roared in fierce agreement. But beneath her rage, a flicker of doubt whispered, a memory of the girl she once was, before darkness claimed her. A fragile alliance. Back at the sanctuary, the group gathered to plan. Sura spread maps and charts across the table, detailing possible enemy movements. Keel pointed to a narrow pass. This is where they'll try to break through. Torin's voice was steady. We'll set traps, use the terrain to our advantage. Lyric smiled slyly, and when they least expect it, we strike back. Arya's gaze hardened. We fight for each other, for the sanctuary, for the future. Maelys growled low, and for the hope that the curse can be broken. Nightfall's promise. That night, as the sanctuary prepared for battle, Arya found a quiet moment alone on the rooftop. The shard pulsed softly in her hand, a beacon of power and promise. Kale joined her, his presence a steady comfort. We'll face the darkness together, he said simply. Arya looked up at the stars, feeling their distant light pierce the darkness. For the first time, she whispered, I believe we can win. The veil of night deepened, but beneath it, a fierce light burned. The battle for the shard, for the curse, and for their souls was only just beginning. Chapter 36, The First Clash. The moon hung low and swollen over the sanctuary, casting silver shadows that danced against the ancient stone walls. The air was thick with tension, every breath heavy with the promise of battle. Somewhere deep in the woods beyond, this army was gathering, a restless tide of darkness creeping closer, step by step, towards the fragile light of the sanctuary. Inside, the atmosphere was electric with anticipation and fear. Arya stood silently among her companions, the shard burning softly in her palm, pulse in sync with her racing heartbeat. Tonight would change everything. The calm before the storm. Kale paced by the entrance to the armory, sharpening his blade with precise, deliberate strokes. The sharp rasp of steel against stone filled the otherwise silent room, a grounding sound amid the chaos of thoughts swirling in his mind. Torin was reviewing battle formations with Sarah and Lyric, their voices low and steady. Each plan was a thread weaving a fragile tapestry of defense, a last stand against the encroaching darkness. Arya felt her hands tremble as she folded the heavy cloak around her shoulders. The shard's glow seemed to burn brighter, almost feverish, as if sensing the coming violence. Malus appeared beside her, the wolf's gaze sharp and unwavering. "The curse tightens its grip," Malus murmured, her voice rough but calm. "But we are not without hope." Arya nodded. "We'll fight, no matter what." The first signs outside, a distant howl sliced through the night. Ni es signal. The enemy moved with calculated precision, shadows pooling beneath the trees like spilled ink. Kale tightened his grip on his sword. "They're close." Torin raised his voice. "Positions. Stay sharp." From the battlements, Sura began weaving defensive wards, glowing glyphs that shimmered like a web of light, a fragile shield against the darkness. Arya could feel the magic humming beneath her skin, a quiet but potent force bolstering their defenses. Lyric melted into the shadows, a ghost among the trees, ready to strike where the enemy least expected. The clash. The first wave hit with a thunderous roar. Nick Salgers surged forward, creatures twisted and fierce, their eyes wild with bloodlust. The ground trembled beneath the pounding of their feet. Kale met them head on, sword flashing in deadly arcs. Every movement was a battle of wills, every strike a fight for survival. Torin's battle cries rang out as he deflected blows and countered with brutal precision. Nearby, Sura's spell scorched the enemy, arcs of fire and ice tearing through the dark ranks. Arya felt the shard pulse violently, a searing heat that rushed through her veins. She raised her hands and a wave of energy exploded outward, sending foes sprawling like rag dolls. A moment of desperation. Amid the chaos, a scream shattered the night. Arya spun toward the sound and saw Malus grappling with a monstrous creature, its claws raking the wolf's side. Without hesitation, Arya surged forward, the shard flaring in her palm. A blast of light tore through the darkness, striking the beast square in the chest. It howled in pain and retreated, leaving Malus panting but alive. Arya's chest heaved with exertion. "Are you okay?" Malus gave a fierce nod. "I'm not done yet." Nyx's shadow. As the battle raged, a shadow moved with unnatural speed through the enemy lines. Nyx herself, dark and radiant, her eyes burning like twin fires. She cut through the sanctuary's defenses with deadly grace, a whirlwind of rage and power. Arya's gaze locked onto her, heart pounding with a mix of fear and something deeper. The unshakable knowledge that this fight was more than just a war. It was a reckoning. Nyx snarled, her voice cold and cruel. "This ends tonight, Arya." The turning tide. The sanctuary's defenders pushed back with renewed fury, their bonds stronger than ever. Kale and Torin fought side by side, their movements perfectly synchronized. Sura's magic blazed like a beacon, shielding their allies and scorching the enemy. Lyric emerged from the shadows, his strikes precise and deadly, scattering Nyx's forces. Arya felt the shard's power surge within her, a tide rising higher than ever before. With a cry, she unleashed the full force of the shard, a brilliant burst of energy that swept across the battlefield, throwing the enemy into chaos, aftermath. As dawn crept over the horizon, the battlefield fell silent. The air was thick with smoke and the scent of sweat and blood. Nyx's forces had been repelled, but at a cost. Arya's knees hit the ground, breath ragged, the shard dim and flickering. Kale knelt beside her, concern etched deep into his features. "Are you all right?" She nodded slowly, eyes distant. "This is only the beginning." Chapter 37. Shadows Within. The dawn was pale and fragile, slipping through the cracks of the sanctuary's battered walls like a tentative promise. Yet inside, the heavy silence weighed on Arya's chest like a suffocating shroud. The battle had ended, but the war was far from over. After the storm, Arya sat on the cold stone floor of the infirmary, her palms still tingling with the fading warmth of the shard. The wounds she'd inflicted on the enemy seemed shallow compared to the ache gnawing within her, the heavy burden of what had been lost and what was still to come. Hale hovered nearby, his usual stoic expression softened by worry. "You pushed too hard." She shook her head, her voice barely a whisper. "I had to power like that," Cale said quietly. "Comes with a cost." Arya looked up, meeting his gaze. The concern there was real, but so was her determination. "Then I'll pay it, whatever it takes." Silent confessions, later as the others rested or tended to their own wounds. Cale found Arya on the balcony, overlooking the ruins of the battleground. The morning light caught the edges of her hair, casting a halo that seemed almost ethereal. He stepped closer, hesitating. "You're carrying more than just the shard's power." Arya sighed, eyes fixed on the distant forest line. "I'm scared, not just for myself, but for everyone." Hale's voice dropped to a low rumble. "We'll face it. Together." The promise hung between them, unspoken but undeniable. A visitor in the shadows. As Arya turned away, a cold breeze swept past, and the shadow of a figure slipped silently onto the balcony. "Arya?" The voice was soft, almost a whisper, yet it cut through the stillness like a blade. She froze, heart pounding. From the shadows emerged Lyric, his usual playful smirk replaced by a grim seriousness. "Nightfall changes people," he said, stepping into the light, "but it reveals truths too." Arya frowned. "What are you saying?" Lyric's gaze held hers, intense and unreadable. "There's more at stake than Nyx and her army. There are shadows within, even among us. Betrayal's edge." The words hung heavy in the air, stirring doubt like poison in her veins. Cale joined them, sensing the tension. "What do you mean, Lyric?" Lyric swallowed hard. "I've seen it. Whispers in the dark, signs of a traitor." Arya's breath caught. "A traitor?" "Yes," Lyric said grimly. "Someone close. Someone who knows our secrets and plans to use them against us." The room seemed to close in around them, the weight of betrayal settling like a storm cloud. Trust shattered. For the next hours, the three of them combed through the details. Conversations, actions, strange disappearances. The list of suspects was shockingly short. Sara, she was fierce and loyal. Torin, a pillar of strength. Myalis, bound by honor and the ancient laws. Cale, his devotion was unquestionable. Then there was Arya herself, a thought that made her stomach twist. Fractures in the light. The possibility that one of their own could be the enemy gnawed at her. It felt like a crack in the foundation of everything she believed in. "I won't let this tear us apart," Arya said, voice shaking but resolute. "We'll find the truth." Lyric nodded, "but it won't be easy. Shadows are born in places no light can reach." Cale stepped forward, placing a steady hand on her shoulder. "Whatever happens, we face it as one." A glimpse of darkness. Later that night, Arya stood alone in the courtyard, the shard clasped tightly in her hand. The glow was faint, almost flickering, a reflection of the doubts swirling inside her. She closed her eyes, letting the shard's energy flow through her. Visions flickered behind her eyelids, twisted faces, whispered lies, and a single chilling image, Nyx standing over a broken sanctuary smiling. The shard pulsed sharply, jolting her back to reality, determined resolve. Arya opened her eyes with renewed fire. "I won't let darkness win," she vowed quietly. The war was far from over, and now the greatest threat might come from within. Chapter 38. Web of Lies. The sanctuary's walls had never felt more suffocating. To the outside world, the ancient fortress stood resilient, a beacon of hope against the growing darkness. But inside, doubt and suspicion crept like poison, unraveling the fragile threads that held Arya's family of monsters together. Unis in the air, Arya's footsteps echoed down the stone corridor. Each step measured, every breath caught between fear and determination. The shard burned faintly in her palm, a tether to the power she barely understood, and a reminder that she was their only hope. Cale had been distant since their confrontation on the balcony. His usual quiet strength was replaced by shadows behind his eyes. A storm she feared was brewing. Torin had also been restless, pacing the war room, reviewing battle plans with a sharp edge in his tone that hadn't been there before. And Lyric had been nothing but cryptic warnings and sidelong glances. Like a spider weaving a web of secrets she was desperate to untangle. A secret meeting that night, Arya received an unexpected summons. A single raven-shaped mark burned into parchment was slipped under her door. It was a call she couldn't ignore. In the depths of the sanctuary's oldest tower, a room bathed in flickering candlelight awaited her. Sura was already there, her violet eyes gleaming with urgency. "We need to talk," Sura said, her voice low but firm. Arya nodded, heart pounding. "What is it?" Sura's gaze flicked toward the door as if expecting someone else. Then back to Arya. "There's more to the traitor than we thought. Fragments of truth." Sura revealed a series of intercepted messages, coded whispers between Inyek's forces and someone inside the sanctuary. The handwriting was cryptic, but the pattern was clear. A traitor feeding information, guiding the enemy. Arya's mind raced, piecing together fragments of betrayal hidden in plain sight. The night Torrhen left the armory without his sword, the strange behavior of Malus during patrols, the whispered arguments between Kael and Lyric. Who could it be? Arya asked, voice barely above a whisper. Sura's eyes darkened. "That's what we need to find out before it's too late." The game begins. The revelation sparked a wave of paranoia. Every glance, every whispered word took on new meaning. Arya felt the weight of leadership crushing down, the shard, in her palm growing hotter with every passing moment. Kael confronted her later in the hall, his expression grim. "We can't trust anyone, not even each other." Arya's voice trembled. Kael shook his head. "Not until we know who's behind this." Together, they devised a plan: subtle surveillance, whispered questions, traps laid in shadow to catch the traitor in the act. Shadows among us, days passed in a tense blur. Arya found herself watching her closest allies with wary eyes. Torrhen's nights grew longer, his answers shorter. Lyric's smirks hid sharper knives. Even Malus, loyal and fierce, seemed weighed down by secrets. Arya's heart ached. Could the person who had pledged their loyalty to her be the one unraveling everything? A midnight encounter. One night, Arya wandered the sanctuary's labyrinthine halls, unable to sleep. The shard's glow pulsed faintly, guiding her steps toward the eastern wing, a place she seldom visited. There, in the shadowed corridor, she spotted a flicker of movement. "Who's there?" she called, voice steady despite the pounding in her chest. From the darkness emerged Torrhen, his face pale, eyes wide with guilt. "I need to tell you something," he whispered urgently. Arya's breath caught now. Confession in the dark, Torrhen led her to a hidden chamber, far from prying eyes. "I never wanted to betray you," he confessed, voice breaking. "But Nyx, she has my sister. She threatened to destroy everything I love." Arya's heart clenched. "Why didn't you tell us?" "I was afraid," Torrhen said, voice trembling. "Afraid you'd see me as weak, as a liability." The weight of his secret pressed down like a stone, but Arya saw the truth in his eyes. "We'll get her back," Arya promised fiercely. Together, the web tightens. As dawn broke over the sanctuary, Arya felt the shard warm in her hand, a beacon of hope and a reminder of the battles yet to come. The traitor was no longer a shadow on the edges of their trust. They were a part of the family, and now, with Torrhen's secret out, the web of lies was beginning to unravel. Chapter 39. Fractured Loyalties. The air in the sanctuary was thick with tension, every shadow whispering secrets, every glance loaded with suspicion. Arya felt as if she were walking through a labyrinth of mirrors, each reflection distorted, hiding truths and lies in equal measure. The weight of secrets. Torrhen's confession had shifted everything. His fear, his silent burden of protecting his sister from Mixagrass brass suddenly made him vulnerable, but it also complicated the fragile trust they'd been clinging to. Arya sat alone in the war room, the flickering candlelight casting long shadows on the walls. The shard rested on the table before her, glowing faintly, a pulse echoing the storm inside her. Kael's voice broke the silence as he entered, footsteps measured but heavy. "We can't afford cracks in our ranks, not now." She nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. "But Torrhen's truth, it changes everything. We have a traitor, but now we have a hostage too." Kael's jaw tightened. "We need to act quickly." Dividing the circle, Arya knew what she had to do, but it tore at her heart. To protect the sanctuary, to save Torrhen's sister, they needed to find the traitor and confront Nyx, but first they had to secure their own circle. She summoned the council: Kael, Lyric, Sarah, Malus, and Torrhen. Each took their place around the ancient stone table, faces shadowed by fatigue and fear. "We have a traitor," Arya began, voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "But we also have someone in need of rescue. Torrhen's sister is in Nyx's hands." The room fell silent. Then Lyric's smirk flickered, replaced by something unreadable. We must be cautious, Sarah warned. Whoever betrays us knows our every move. Keel's eyes met Lyric's briefly, a silent challenge. Unseen battles. Plans were drawn, strategies whispered behind closed doors. Arya took to her training, pushing the shard's power deeper inside her, desperate to control the surge without losing herself. But the nights were the hardest. Shadows clawed at her mind, twisting dreams into nightmares. One night, as rain hammered the sanctuary's rooftops, she found herself in the training hall, the shard's glow lighting the empty room. Kael entered silently, his presence steady. "You're pushing too hard," he said, concern softening his harsh tone. "I have to be ready," Arya replied, voice low. "For her, for all of us." Kael nodded but didn't speak further. Instead, he extended a hand. "Let me help," bonds forged in fire. Their training sessions became a refuge, moments where the war outside could be forgotten. Kael's strength steadied her, his calm a balm to the chaos. Between strikes and parries, their connection deepened, unspoken, electric, but always restrained by the looming threat. One evening, after a particularly grueling session, Kael caught her gaze. "Arya," he murmured, voice rough with something like vulnerability. "You don't have to carry this alone." Her heart quickened. "I'm afraid," she admitted, voice barely a whisper. Kael's fingers brushed a stray lock of hair from her face. "Then let me be your strength," whispers of betrayal. Meanwhile, the hunt for the traitor continued in the shadows. Sura and Lyric moved like ghosts, tracing secrets through the corridors, piecing together fractured loyalties. Arya's trust wavered. Was the traitor the silent melee ever, loyal but withdrawn? Or Lyric, whose smile hid depths none could fathom? Late one night, Arya followed a thread of whispers to a hidden chamber beneath the sanctuary, a place of forgotten memories and forbidden truths. There, in the dim light, she caught a glimpse of a shadow slipping away, a figure cloaked in darkness, the shattered mask. The figure stopped, turning just enough to reveal a flash of familiar eyes, cold, calculating, and filled with betrayal. "Why?" Arya demanded, voice cracking with hurt. The figure smiled, a cruel twist. "Because power is never given freely. It's taken." The revelation shattered something inside her, a fracture that no shard could mend. The calm before the storm. As dawn broke, Arya returned to the council, the weight of knowledge heavy on her shoulders. "We know who the traitor is," she said quietly, "and we must act before everything we've built falls apart." Kael's grip on her hand was fierce. "We're with you." The sanctuary held its breath on the edge of war, betrayal, and a hope that still flickered like a fragile flame. Chapter 40. The Heart of Betrayal. The sanctuary was cloaked in an uneasy silence as dawn broke through shattered windows and twisted vine clawing their way inside. The stone walls, once a fortress of safety, now felt like a cage teetering on the edge of collapse. Arya's heart hammered relentlessly in her chest. The knowledge she carried was a poison that threatened to consume everything she'd fought for. The weight of truth. Arya sat at the ancient stone table where the council had gathered countless times before. The flickering candlelight painted their faces in shifting shadows. Keel stood near the entrance, his muscular frame a constant reminder of their shared battles and whispered promises. The others, Lyric, Sarah, Myalis, and Torin, awaited her words with bated breath. "I know who the traitor is," Arya said, her voice barely above a whisper, yet carrying the weight of an executioner. Sentence. The room fell deathly silent. Even the crackling of the fire seemed to hold its breath. "Tell us," Sarah urged, her eyes sharp as a blade. Arya took a deep breath, steadying herself. Its Lyric gasps rippled through the group. Torin's eyes widened in disbelief. Kael's expression hardened, and Lyric's calm facade cracked just slightly enough to reveal the shadow beneath. Lyric's confession. Lyric stepped forward, the dim candlelight catching the glint in his eyes, a mixture of defiance and regret. "Yes," he admitted, voice low but steady. "I betrayed you." A tremor ran through Arya. "Why? How could you?" He looked away, the weight of his secret crushing him. "Because I had no choice. Nyx promised me a future safety for my family. Power to protect those I love." Arya's fists clenched. "You sold us out for promises." Lyric's gaze locked with hers, haunted. "I did what I thought was necessary, but I never wanted to hurt you, or anyone here." The council's judgment. Kael's voice broke through the tension, cold and unyielding. "Betrayal cannot be forgiven, Lyric, not when it endangers us all." Sarah nodded in agreement. "He compromised our plans, put Torin's sister in greater danger." Myalis stayed silent, eyes narrowed in contemplation. Torin's voice was barely audible. "What happens now?" Arya met Lyric's eyes one last time, sorrow mingling with resolve. We give him a chance to make things right, but he will be watched closely, preparing for the rescue. The council wasted no time. Plans were hastily redrawn, strategies sharpened like blades. The truth about Lyric's betrayal added urgency and danger to their mission to rescue Torin's sister. Arya gathered the shard in her hands, feeling its cold pulse, as if it beat in sync with her own heart. The power it held was immense, but so was the risk. Kale stepped beside her, strength radiating in quiet support. "We go at nightfall," Arya nodded, steeling herself. "We bring her back, no matter the cost." The descent into Inyak's lair. As darkness swallowed the sky, Arya and the council moved through the forest. Shadows among shadows. The air grew thick with malevolence the closer they neared next domain. The trees twisted into unnatural shapes, their branches like claws reaching for the intruders. The ground beneath their feet was soft and damp, as if the earth itself mourned what had been lost. Lyric led the way, his betrayal now. A double-edged sword, his knowledge invaluable, yet his loyalty in question. "Stay close," he warned, voice tense, facing the darkness. The entrance to the lair yawned before them, a cavernous maw dripping with dark magic. The air shimmered with a toxic haze, distorting the world like heat waves. Arya's hand tightened around the shard. "This is it." Inside, the lair was a twisted reflection of the sanctuary, corrupted stone walls etched with glowing runes, pools of dark water that whispered secrets. Suddenly, shadows surged forward. Nyx's minions, grotesque creatures born of nightmare and darkness, barred their path. Kale roared into battle, his sword flashing in the gloom. Sora and Maelys unleashed their magic, weaving fire and ice into deadly spells. Arya channeled the shard's energy, a fierce light bursting from her palms, cutting through the darkness. The rescue. Deeper into the lair they found, her Torin sister bound by chains of shadow magic, pale and trembling but alive. Arya rushed to her side, breaking the chains with a surge of light. "Come with us," she urged gently, but as they turned to flee, Nyx appeared. A towering figure cloaked in night, eyes burning like coals. "You think you can steal what is mine?" Nyx hissed, voice echoing like thunder. The final confrontation. The battle was fierce. Nyx wielded shadows like weapons, striking with deadly precision. Arya stood her ground, the shard glowing brighter as she pushed back the darkness. Kale and the others fought beside her, their unity a beacon against Nyx's fury. Lyric, redeemed by his actions, stood between Arya and a lethal blow, taking the strike meant for her. Pain seared through him, but his resolve never faltered. With a final surge, Arya unleashed the shard's full power, a blinding explosion of light that shattered Inyak's form, sending her screaming into the void. Aftermath. The lair began to collapse, the dark magic unraveling. The group fled, hearts pounding, carrying Torin's sister to safety. Lyric's wound was grave, but hope flickered in the sanctuary as Arya tended to him. The betrayal had nearly destroyed them, but in the crucible of fire, their bonds were reforged stronger than ever. Arya gazed at the shard, now dimming but still warm. "This is only the beginning," she whispered. Chapter 41. Fractures in the sanctuary. The sanctuary was quiet, but the silence was heavy, like the calm before a storm that no one could predict. Arya stood by the window of her chamber, gazing out at the tangled forest that stretched endlessly beyond the stone walls. The moonlight cast silver patterns over the treetops, but even its gentle glow couldn't soften the tension that gripped her heart, the aftershocks of battle. The rescue had been a success, but the cost lingered like a shadow on every face. Lyric lay in the infirmary, pale and weak, his breathing shallow beneath the healing spells. Kale kept a silent vigil at his side, his usual fierce demeanor softened by a rare vulnerability. Arya's own body ached, muscles trembling with exhaustion, but it was the weight in her chest that was hardest to bear, the knowledge that their victory had come with a price. Sarah entered quietly, breaking Arya's reverie. "We can't keep pretending everything is fine." Arya turned, her eyes heavy with fatigue. "I know. Genesee alliances, the betrayal had cut deep, and although Lyric's redemption had saved them, trust wasn't something that could be restored with a single act. The council was fractured, alliances shifting beneath the surface like tremors waiting to break free. Maelys approached, her sharp eyes assessing Arya with unspoken questions. "We need to decide what to do with Lyric once he wakes. He holds knowledge we can't afford to lose, but can we risk letting him walk free among us?" Kale's voice was low but firm. "He saved us all. He deserves a chance, but under watch. And consequences if he betrays us again." Arya nodded, conflicted. "He will be confined, but not forgotten." The burden of leadership. Later, Arya found herself alone in the strategy room, maps and battle plans spread before her like a shattered puzzle. The shard lay on the table, its faint pulse a reminder of the power she wielded and the responsibilities it demanded. Torrin's voice startled her from the doorway. "You're carrying the weight of all of us." She looked up, forcing a smile. "Someone has to." He stepped inside, the lines of worry etched across his face. "You don't have to do it alone." Arya's gaze fell to the shard. "Sometimes it feels like the more I protect, the less I'm protecting anyone at all." Secrets beneath the surface. That night, Arya couldn't sleep. The flickering candle cast dancing shadows as she pulled out the ancient journal she had recovered from Mydek's lair, its pages filled with cryptic runes and sketches of creatures that defied understanding. She traced her fingers over a symbol, feeling a strange resonance. Suddenly, a faint glow emerged from the ink, illuminating a hidden passage written between the lines. Her breath caught. The journal spoke of a deeper darkness, a source of Enthekau's power buried beneath the sanctuary itself, a forbidden descent. Gathering Kael, Sarah, and Malis, Arya revealed the discovery. "There's more to Nyx's power than we knew," she said, voice steady but urgent. "If this is true, the real battle isn't over." Kael frowned. "Going deeper beneath the sanctuary could be dangerous. We don't know what traps or creatures lie there." Sarah's eyes gleamed with determination. "If we don't confront it now, it will grow stronger." Malis laid her hand on the journal. "This could be the key to ending the war, or our undoing." Into the abyss, the group prepared for the descent into the unknown, gathering weapons, magic, and the shard for protection. The entrance was hidden beneath the sanctuary's oldest altar, a stone slab that shifted away to reveal a spiral staircase carved from obsidian. As they descended, the air grew colder, heavier, with an ancient malice that seemed to seep from the very walls. Arya's heart pounded. Every step echoed in the darkness, swallowed by shadows that whispered secrets too old to understand. Shadows and whispers. The cavern below was a vast labyrinth, its tunnels twisting and turning like the veins of a living beast. Strange glyphs glowed faintly on the walls, pulsing with an eerie light. Suddenly, a whisper floated on the air, a voice so soft it went almost indistinguishable from the wind. "Arya." She spun, but no one was there. "Who's there?" she called, her voice steady despite the chill creeping down her spine. Only silence answered. An uneasy revelation. Deeper inside, they found a chamber unlike any other, walls covered in crystalline formations that hummed with power. In the center lay an ancient altar, pulsing with dark energy. Arya approached cautiously, the shard glowing brighter in response. Suddenly the chamber filled with visions, flashes of a time long past, of a betrayal that had doomed the sanctuary before. A figure appeared in the vision, a woman with eyes like stars, her voice like thunder. "This power belongs to those who can wield it, but beware the cost." Arya staggered back, the weight of the prophecy pressing down. The choice. As the visions faded, Kael stepped beside her, steady and strong. "We can take this power, use it against Nyx's remnants. But if the warning is true..." Arya's eyes met his. "We risk losing ourselves." Sarah tightened her grip on her staff. "Or we risk everything by doing nothing." Malis looked from one to the other, then nodded. "We must decide. Now." A moment of resolve. Arya's gaze drifted to the shard in her hand, then to her friends. They had all sacrificed so much. The sanctuary depended on their choice. "We take the power," she said finally. Voice resolute. Kael exhaled, a mixture of relief and fear. Together, as they prepared to channel the ancient energy, Arya knew their path was forever changed. The light and darkness within them now intertwined in ways they could not yet understand. Chapter 42. Embrace of the Darkness. The air in the ancient chamber thickened as the four friends, Arya, Kael, Sarah, and Malis, prepared themselves for the ritual. The crystalline altar pulsed with dark energy, casting eerie shadows that flickered against the jagged cavern walls. The shard in Arya's hand hummed louder, resonating with the chamber's power like a heartbeat in sync with hers. The weight of the decision. Arya closed her eyes, drawing in a steady breath. The visions from the previous chamber still echoed in her mind, the warning of a power that demanded a price too high, the visage of the woman with star-lit eyes, the thunderous voice urging caution. But the sanctuary's fate hung in the balance. To defeat Nyx's lingering darkness, they needed this power. It was a risk they had to take. "We are ready," Arya said, voice steady but low. Kael nodded, gripping his sword tightly. Together, Sarah raised her staff, chanting an incantation in a language older than time itself. Malis placed her hands on the altar's edge, focusing her magic to open the flow of energy. The ritual begins. The crystals embedded in the altar flared, sending brilliant blue sparks across the chamber. A vortex of light and shadow spiraled upward, and Arya felt the shard in her palm grow warm, almost alive. She raised the shard high, its glow intensifying until it bathed the entire cavern in blinding light. Suddenly the energy surged into them, flooding their veins with raw power. Pain stabbed through Arya's chest as the darkness intertwined with the light inside her. Keel grunted, struggling to maintain control. Sura's voice faltered, but she pushed forward. Maelis's eyes blazed with determination. The shadow within, Arya's vision blurred, images swirled, memories not her own, sensations alien and frightening. She saw a vast void, endless and cold, but within it a spark of light fought desperately to survive. A voice echoed in her mind, seductive, commanding. "Accept me, Arya. Embrace the power you need. Only then will you be strong enough to save them." Fear clashed with desire, her heart pounding in turmoil. Kale's struggled beside her. Kale's breathing grew ragged. His normally fierce eyes flickered with doubt. "I can't hold it," he muttered, collapsing to one knee. Sarah and Milas rushed to steady him, their hands glowing with healing magic. Arya reached out, her voice barely a whisper. "Stay with us." He met her gaze, fierce once more. "We have to finish this." A glimpse of the past. Suddenly the chamber shifted. The crystal walls became translucent, revealing a sprawling battlefield ravaged by an ancient war. Figures clad in shadow and flame fought endlessly, caught in a cycle of destruction. In the center stood the woman from the visions, the original bearer of the shard's power. She wielded magic both beautiful and terrifying, her face etched with sorrow. Arya felt a deep connection, as if the woman's fate was intertwined with hers. The power's price. The vision faded, replaced by a sharp, searing pain in Arya's chest. She stumbled, clutching her heart. "Arya," Zara cried, catching her before she fell. The shard pulsed violently. Arya realized the truth. The power wasn't free. It demanded sacrifice. Her vision darkened as whispers filled her mind, the same voice urging surrender. Inner battle. Arya retreated inward, fighting to maintain control over the darkness that threatened to consume her. Her mind became a battlefield, shadows twisting and curling like smoke, trying to claim her soul. She summoned every ounce of strength, focusing on the memories of her friends, the sanctuary, and the hope they fought for. Slowly, the darkness hesitated, pulled back by her will. Emergence. Gasping for breath, Arya opened her eyes. The shard's glow softened, its dark pulse calming. "We did it," she whispered, though her body trembled from the effort. Kale looked up, sweat slicked across his brow. "But the power, it changed us." Sarah nodded grimly. "We are stronger, yes, but this magic will follow us. We must learn to control it, or it will control us." Maelis's gaze hardened. "The sanctuary needs to prepare. Darkness like this won't be easily defeated." New bonds forged. As the energy settled, Arya noticed the subtle changes. In her friends, a faint shimmer of shadows beneath their skin, a deeper glow in their eyes. They were marked by the power now, bound together in a way that transcended friendship or alliance. "We are linked," Arya said softly. "By this power and by our will." Kale's usual scowl softened. "Then we fight as one," a warning from within. That night, as Arya rested, the darkness whispered again, gentler this time, almost a lullaby. "Remember, Arya, the power you hold is a double. Chejin's sword, it will save you, and it will consume you. The choice is yours." Her fingers tightened around the shard. She would choose wisely. The sanctuary had changed. The war was far from over, and Arya was no longer just a girl bound to monsters. She was a bearer of ancient power, a light forged in shadow. Chapter 43. Shadows Rising. The first light of dawn filtered weakly through the stained glass windows of the sanctuary's great hall. The air was heavy with anticipation, a stillness that felt less like peace and more like the calm before a storm. Arya sat cross-legged on the cold stone floor, the shard resting on her palm. Its glow was now faint but steady, like a heartbeat tethered to her own. Despite the exhaustion that pulled at her limbs, her mind was restless, haunted by the shadows within and the choices ahead. Hale leaned against the cracked pillar nearby, sharpening his sword with slow, deliberate strokes. His usual fiery energy was tempered now, replaced by a grim seriousness that mirrored Arya's own. Sarah and Maelis sat at a carved wooden table, poring over ancient scrolls and fragmented texts. Their murmur wove a tapestry of arcane knowledge and cryptic warnings, clues left behind by the ancients who had once battled the darkness Arya now carried. The weight of knowledge. Listen to this, Sarah said, her finger tracing the faded words on a brittle parchment. The power we hold is called the Nocturne Essence. It's a fragment of an ancient god's soul, shattered in a war that split the heavens from the earth. Malus frowned. The text warns that those who wield the essence become conduits, vessels that can channel immense power but are always vulnerable to corruption. Arya swallowed hard. The shard she carried wasn't just a tool or weapon, it was a living force with its own will, ancient and unpredictable. Kale sheathed his sword, his gaze dark. So, what does that mean for us? That we're just ticking time bombs waiting to lose ourselves. Sarah shook her head slowly. It means we have to learn control, balance. The ancients spoke of a rite of harmony, a ritual to bind the essence without losing oneself to it. But no one has performed it in centuries. Malus's eyes gleamed with determination. Then we must be the first. Uneasy alliances. Outside the hall, a distant rumble echoed through the sanctuary's stone corridors. Footsteps, urgent and heavy, approached. Arya stood, instinctively clutching the shard. The doors burst open, revealing a breathless figure, a scout from the outer wards. The enemy advances, he gasped. Nyx's followers gather beyond the valley. They've discovered the sanctuary's new power, and they're coming for us. Kale's jaw tightened. Then there's no time to waste. Arya nodded, her resolve hardening. The sanctuary had been a refuge, but now it was the last bastion against a rising tide of darkness. Preparations for battle. The four friends sprang into action. Sarah began weaving protective wards around the sanctuaries perimeter, her voice rising in incantations that shimmered with raw energy. Malus summoned elemental forces, gusts of wind, flickers of flame, and tremors in the earth to bolster their defenses. Kale rallied the warriors, his commanding presence igniting a spark of courage even in the most fearful hearts. Arya stood apart, feeling the shard pulse as the shadows within stirred, urging her to unleash its full might. But she held back, not yet. The power was still a wild thing, unpredictable and dangerous. A moment of doubt, as the sun climbed higher, Arya found herself drawn to the sanctuary's highest tower. From the narrow window, she could see the valley below, a dark mass of twisted figures gathering like a storm. Her breath hitched as memories flooded her mind. The faces of those she'd lost, the sacrifices made, the weight of destiny pressing down on her. She whispered to the shard, "How do I save them all?" Without losing myself, the shard shimmered softly as if responding. Avitate visitor. A sudden knock startled her from her reverie. Turning, Arya found an unfamiliar figure waiting in the shadows, a man cloaked in midnight blue, his eyes glowing faintly silver. "Arya," he said quietly, "I've come with a message and an offer." Arya's heart pounded. The man's presence was unexpected and somehow unsettling. She instinctively took a step back, shielding the shard closer to her chest. "Who are you?" she demanded, voice steady despite the swirling unease. The man's lips curled into a faint, enigmatic smile. "I am Lysander, a messenger. From the Circle of the Veil. We have watched your struggle, and we believe your cause may align with our own." Arya narrowed her eyes. "Why should I trust you? The last time someone claimed to be an ally from a circle, it ended in betrayal." Lysander's gaze softened, though a shadow of pain flickered in his eyes. "I understand your doubt. The world of monsters and men is woven with lies and half-truths, but time is running out. The darkness you fight is spreading beyond what you can see." She studied him carefully, the calm confidence, the quiet authority, and something deep inside whispered that this encounter was no accident. "Speak," she said finally, "and make it quick." A revelation. Lysander stepped forward, pulling from beneath his cloak a small ancient relic, a silver amulet engraved with intricate runes. "This," he explained, "is the mark of the veil. It grants access to hidden knowledge and secret places. With it you might find answers you seek, including how to master the Nocturne Essence." Arya's fingers itched with curiosity, but caution stayed her hand. "And what do you want in return?" Kale's voice echoed from the doorway, sharp and suspicious. Lysander glanced at Kale, then back at Arya. "Only an alliance. We can provide guidance, knowledge, and reinforcements. In return, we ask for your trust and a share in the fight against Nyx." Sarah stepped forward, eyes narrowed in thought. "The Circle of the Veil. They've been a myth for centuries. If this is true, it could change everything." Malus whispered, But if it's a trap, Arya raised a hand, silencing them all. We don't have the luxury of ignoring any chance for help. The burden of trust. Lysander extended the amulet toward her. Take it, but be warned, the veil reveals truths that can break the strongest minds. If you are not ready, it may consume you. Arya hesitated, then reached out and grasped the cold silver. The moment her skin touched the runes, a pulse of energy surged through her veins, a wave of visions and whispers that flooded her mind. She staggered, breath shallow, as fragments of forgotten memories flashed before her eyes. A battlefield scorched with fire, a fallen god whispering secrets, and the looming shadow of Nyx growing ever larger. When the storm of images subsided, she looked up, eyes wide but resolute. I accept, she said. A new path. Outside, the sanctuary's defenders prepared for the impending assault. The wind carried the distant sounds of drums and chants the army of darkness drawing near. Chaol tightened his grip on his sword. We fight not just for survival, but for the future of both our worlds. Arya slipped the amulet around her neck. Feeling its weight, both physical and symbolic, the fight ahead would demand everything from them. Courage, sacrifice, and unity. As the sun dipped behind the mountains, casting long shadows over the valley, Arya raised her gaze. The war was far from over, but now, armed with newfound allies and ancient power, she was ready to face the darkness head-on. Chapter 44, The Rite of Shadows. The night had deepened into a velvet black, punctuated only by the faint flicker of torchlight along the sanctuary. Outer walls, the air was thick with tension, a silence that spoke louder than words, as if the entire world held its breath before the coming storm. Inside the great hall, Arya stood before the ancient altar, the silver amulet from Lysander resting heavily against her chest. Around her the four friends gathered, Chaol, Sarah, Maelis, and Lysander himself, each carrying the weight of the battle yet to come. The time had come to perform the Rite of Harmony, the ancient ritual that would bind the nocturne essence to Arya's soul, granting her control, but at a price, the preparation. Sarah began the ritual, her voice low and melodic, weaving words from a forgotten language that resonated with the stone walls themselves. She traced glowing sigils in the air, their light coiling around Arya like ethereal, chains delicate yet unbreakable. Maelis summoned elemental forces to create a circle of protection, fire to warm, wind to purify, earth to ground, and water to cleanse. The four elements swirled in harmony, encasing Arya in a sphere of shimmering energy. Chaol stood guard, his eyes scanning the shadows beyond the hall. Outside, the murmurs of Myrxes' approaching army were a distant drumbeat, a reminder that time was scarce. Lysander stepped closer, his silver amulet glowing softly. This ritual will not only bind the essence, it will reveal the darkness that lurks within. You must face it, Arya. She nodded, swallowing the surge of fear and uncertainty that rose in her chest. This was the moment she had dreaded, and yet it was the only path forward. Entering the rift, as Sarah's chant intensified, the sigils flared brighter, the protective circle tightening around Arya. The shard of nocturne essence in her palm began to pulse wildly, its light casting strange shadows across the hall. A sudden gust swept through the chamber, blowing out the torches and plunging them into darkness. Except for the shard's eerie glow, it grew until the entire hall was bathed in ghostly silver light. Then, without warning, the light fractured, ripping open a rift in the fabric of reality. Arya's breath caught as she was pulled forward, not physically but through a shifting landscape of shadow and memory. The inner darkness. The rift revealed a realm unlike any she had seen, a place where light and dark merged in constant battle, where every step echoed with voices long forgotten. At the center stood a figure dark and twisted, a reflection of Arya herself, yet warped by rage and sorrow. You cannot hide from me, the shadow hissed, voice like broken glass. I am the part of you that craves destruction. Chaos, the hunger beneath the light. Arya steadied herself. I am more than this darkness, the shadow laughed. A sound that shattered the silence like thunder. Prove it, battle of wills. The shadow lunged, a tempest of rage and fury. Arya dodged, feeling the nocturne essence flare in. Response wild and untamed. With each clash, memories flashed, the losses she'd endured, the betrayals, the sacrifices. The darkness fed on her fear, trying to consume her completely. But with every strike, Arya found strength in Chaol's unwavering loyalty, Sarah's wisdom, Malus' courage and Lysander's unexpected alliance. She whispered, "I am not alone." The shadow faltered, shrinking under the light of her resolve. The shadow shrieked, its form flickering like smoke in the wind. "You cannot banish me. I am as much a part of you as your precious light." Arya closed her eyes, drawing in a steadying breath. The nocturne essence in her hand throbbed fiercely, an ancient pulse syncing with the rhythm of her own heartbeat. Opening her eyes, she spoke softly but with fierce conviction. "You are part of me, yes. But I choose who I become." The spectral figure lunged again, but this time Arya did not dodge. She met it head-on, focusing all her energy into the shard. Light burst from her palm, searing through the darkness like a blade. The hall trembled as the rift began to close, the battle between light and shadow reaching its crescendo. Arya felt a searing pain in her chest as the nocturne essence bound to her soul, threading through every fiber of her being. Her vision blurred and memories flashed, both painful and joyous, weaving into the core of her identity. When the light finally dimmed, the shadow was gone. In its place stood Arya, breathing heavily, her eyes glowing faintly with a new inner power. Sarah's voice broke the silence. "It is done." Kale exhaled deeply, lowering his sword. "You did it. You survived." Lysander stepped forward, reverence in his gaze. "The essence is no longer a burden but a weapon forged by your will." Malus smiled, placing a steadying hand on Arya's shoulder. "This is the beginning of your true power." Arya looked down at the amulet glowing softly around her neck. The war was far from over, but she had taken the first step into a destiny greater than she had ever imagined. Chapter 45. Aftermath and Alliances. The morning light filtered softly through the stained glass windows of the sanctuary, casting fractured patterns across the cold stone floor. The air was still heavy with the residue of the night's ritual, thick with unsaid questions and quiet anticipation. Arya sat alone on a worn bench near the altar, her fingers brushing absent-mindedly over the silver amulet that now pulsed gently at her throat. The nocturne essence was no longer a distant, unknowable force. It was part of her, woven into the fabric of her being, a whisper at the edge of every thought. But with power came uncertainty, the weight of the ritual. Her breath hitched as she replayed the vision from the rift, the dark shadow that had mirrored her deepest fears, her rage, and her pain. That shadow was not destroyed. It was integrated, a reminder that even the light had its darkness. Kale's footsteps echoed down the corridor, steady and familiar. He approached without a word, sitting beside her with a quiet strength that grounded her. "You okay?" he asked softly. Arya hesitated, then nodded. Different now. "The essence isn't just power. It's a part of me, but it's also a burden. I can feel it pulling like a tide I can't control." Kale nodded knowingly. "Power always comes with a price, but you survived the rite. That means you're stronger than you think." Her gaze met his, gratitude shining through her exhaustion. "I couldn't have done it without you." Kale smiled faintly. "We're in this together." Unseen eyes outside the sanctuary. Shadows moved with purpose. Enyek's forces were gathering, the drums of war growing louder each hour. But another presence watched silently from the darkness. A figure cloaked in midnight, eyes glowing with unreadable intent. Lysander stood atop a nearby ridge, his gaze fixed on the horizon where the enemy amassed. The victory of the ritual was a turning point, but it was also a beacon, drawing allies and enemies alike. Beside him, Malus's fingers traced the intricate symbols on her staff. "The balance is shifting," she murmured, "and not everyone who approaches means us well." Lysander's jaw tightened. "We'll need every ally we can find, and we must be cautious who we trust." A visitor at dawn. Back inside, the first rays of sunlight were just beginning to warm the sanctuary when a soft knock echoed through the chamber. Sura opened the door to reveal a young woman cloaked in emerald robes, her eyes sharp and calculating. "I bring a message," she said, voice steady but urgent. "From the Council of Elders." Arya rose, heart pounding. The council had been silent since the outbreak of chaos. Their intervention could mean salvation or deeper entanglement in political games. "What do they want?" Arya asked. The woman's gaze flickered to the amulet. "They want to speak with you, and the essence." Arya's pulse quickened as the woman in emerald stepped inside, her eyes sharp and unreadable. "The council has watched your rite," she said, voice low but commanding. "They acknowledge the strength you have shown. But your binding to the nocturne essence has shifted the balance in ways they did not anticipate." Arya folded her arms, a knot tightening in her stomach. "What do they want from me, from us?" The envoy glanced around the chamber, then lowered her voice further. "They are wary. The essence is a force of both creation and destruction. Its power cannot be contained by one individual or even one faction. They propose an alliance. Ah, alliance, Arya echoed. After abandoning us when the darkness first broke loose, the envoy's eyes narrowed. Desperation breeds new accords. The council's resources and knowledge are vast. You will need their aid if you are to survive what's coming. Kale stepped forward, his hand resting protectively on Arya's shoulder. And what price is this? Alliance demand. The woman. S expression softened just enough to hint at caution. Trust, transparency, and obedience to the greater good. A heavy silence settled over the room. Maelys broke it first, voice steady as ever. The greater good often wears many faces. We must tread carefully. Arya's fingers clenched the amulet. The power within her hummed a reminder of everything at stake. She glanced around at her companions, the allies who had stood by her through shadows and fire. "We will hear the council out," Arya said at last, "but on our terms." The envoy inclined her head. "That is all they ask." The day deepened as plans were laid, messages sent, and new paths forged. But outside the sanctuary, the winds whispered warnings. The dark forces gathered, and ancient rivalries stirred from their slumber. Arya knew one thing with certainty. The next chapter of their story was about to begin, and the true test of their bond was yet to come. Chapter 46. Shadows stirring, the air was thick with tension as the council envoy departed, leaving behind a heavy silence that settled over the sanctuary like a gathering storm. Arya stood by the window, watching the early evening sky bleed shades of crimson and gold, feeling the weight of what lay ahead press deep into her bones. Kale approached silently, his steps measured and sure. "You did well," he said quietly, not as a reassurance, but as a statement of fact. Arya turned, meeting his gaze with a mixture of exhaustion and determination. "I don't know if I did well enough. The council wants an alliance, but at what cost? And who else is watching us? Uneasy alliances. The Council of Elders had once been a symbol of unity and wisdom among the realms, until fear and pride fractured their cohesion. Their silence during the rise of the Nocturne essence had spoken volumes. They did not trust the unpredictable power, nor those who wielded it. Now, their sudden interest sparked a mixture of hope and suspicion. Arya's heart twisted with the knowledge that, while allies would be found in the shadows, enemies wore many faces. Inside the Great Hall, Lysander and Maelys were deep in conversation with Sura, their voices low but urgent. "They're playing a long game," Lysander said, rubbing his chin thoughtfully. "They want to control the power you bear and possibly us all." Maelys nodded, "But we cannot turn away from potential help. The forces gathering beyond our borders will not wait for us to be ready." Zara's eyes gleamed in the fading light. "We must be vigilant. The true battle is not just for power but for trust." A visitor from the north, as night cloaked the sanctuary. A sudden knock shattered the fragile calm. Arya opened the heavy wooden door to find a figure wrapped in furs, frost clinging to the edges of their cloak. The visitor's eyes, sharp and piercing, held the cold resolve of the northern wilds. "I bring a message from the Winter Court," the stranger announced. "They seek parley." Arya's mind raced. The Winter Court was legendary for their fierce independence and enigmatic dealings. An alliance with them could shift the balance, but the price was often steep. Kale stepped forward, his hand resting on the hilt of his sword. "Why now? Why come to us?" The visitor's gaze did not waver. "Because the darkness threatens all realms. Even the coldest hearts must thaw in the face of annihilation." Secrets in the shadows. That night, as the sanctuary settled into uneasy rest, Arya found herself unable to sleep. The Nocturne essence pulsed faintly against her skin, a constant reminder of the power and peril within. She paced the chamber, thoughts swirling. The Council of Elders, the Winter Court, Mick's army amassing like a storm on the horizon, and the shadow that still lingered inside her. Could she trust anyone? Could she even trust herself? A soft knock pulled her from the spiral of doubt. Kale entered quietly. A look of concern etched into his features. "You're not alone in this," he said softly. "We will face the darkness together." Arya's breath hitched, the warmth of his words cutting through the cold uncertainty. But deep down, she knew the path ahead was a razor's edge. One misstep could mean the end of everything they fought for. The flickering candlelight cast long shadows across the chamber as Arya and Kale sat opposite each other, the silence between them heavy but not uncomfortable. Outside, the wind howled against the thick stone walls, as if nature itself was holding its breath. "You need rest," Kale said, finally breaking the silence. "The power inside you, it's not just a gift, it's a burden, and if you let it consume you, It will tear you apart. Arya shook her head, her eyes fixed on the dancing flame. I've already lost so much, KL. I can't afford to lose control now, not when we're so close. Kale's expression softened. That's why you must lean on us, on me. You don't have to carry this alone. For a moment, the weight on her chest seemed lighter. The ever-present hum of the nocturne essence a little less demanding. She wanted to believe it was true, that together they could defy the darkness closing in, but doubt gnawed at her, as relentless as the shadows outside. The following morning, the sanctuary stirred with urgency. Messengers arrived from distant realms bearing tidings of strange disturbances, forests withering overnight, rivers turning to ink, and creatures, once dormant, awakening with fierce hunger. Arya convened her closest allies, Maelis, Lysander, Sarah, and Kale in the war. Mean that Nike for thouist now. Maelis, Lyshan, then Shou and the Upshai. The one Makok the Gao KKKKKKKK, and they room, a vaulted chamber lined with maps and ancient texts. The darkness is spreading faster than we feared, Maelis reported, pointing to the regions marked in deep crimson. Enyak's influence is corrupting the land itself. Lysander's voice was grim. The council's hesitation has cost us precious time. We must strike before their forces become unstoppable. Sura laid out a series of old runes etched into the table surface. There is a way to sever Enhek's connection to the nocturne essence, but it requires a sacrifice, a tether to the power itself. Arya's heart quickened. A sacrifice. What kind of sacrifice? A willing one, Sura said. Someone who can bind themselves to the essence, trapping its corruption before it spreads further. Kale's gaze hardened. You mean another binding like yours? Arya nodded slowly. The idea was terrifying but necessary. If they did not act, all could be lost. Later that day, word came from the Winter Court and Sonvoy. They demanded a private audience with Arya. The meeting was held in the frost-laden halls of the sanctuary's northern wing, where cold seeped into the stone like whispered threats. The envoy, a tall figure clad in white and silver, regarded Arya with icy eyes. We admire your strength, the envoy said. Voice as crisp as the winter air. But the Winter Court offers more than words. We offer warriors and ancient magic long forgotten. Arya folded her arms. And what do you want in return? Only your promise that the nocturne essence will not be used to threaten our lands, the envoy replied smoothly. And your commitment to the alliance. Kale's hand instinctively moved to his sword, and if she refuses, the envoy smiled thinly, then you will face the full wrath of the north and the shadows will feast on your doubt. That night, as Arya lay awake, the weight of the choices before her pressed down like the coldest winter. Allies with strings attached, a power that could destroy or save, and the ever-present shadow of Nyx waiting for a moment of weakness. Kale's words echoed in her mind. You don't have to carry this alone. But could she trust that even as the darkness grew, her fingers closed tightly around the amulet, the nocturne essence, pulsing softly beneath her skin, a reminder that her fate was bound to forces far greater than herself. The battle for the realms had only just begun. Chapter 47, The Fractured Veil. The dawn broke cold and muted over the sanctuary, casting long shadows through the ancient trees that surrounded the stone walls. Arya woke with a start, her breath visible in the chill air, the remnants of the nocturne essence still humming faintly beneath her skin. The weight of the previous days pressed heavily on her chest, tighter than any armor. She sat up slowly, the flickering candle on the bedside table casting a soft glow across the rough-hewn room. Outside, the sanctuary was waking, but the usual bustle felt muted, as if the very air was thick with anticipation and unease. Kale's footsteps echoed softly in the hall before the door creaked open. His dark eyes searched hers, unreadable but concerned. The Winter Court's envoy has sent a message, he said quietly. They want to meet again tonight. Arya nodded, her mind already racing. And the council, still divided. Some want to accept the Winter Court's terms, others are wary. More than wary, some say the North's magic is as dangerous as Nyx herself. Her jaw clenched. We don't have the luxury of waiting for unanimous trust. Kale's gaze softened. No, but rushing into an alliance could fracture everything we're trying to hold together. The gathering storm, that afternoon, the war room was alive with murmurs and shifting shadows. Maps spread across the stone table were marked with intricate runes and hastily drawn arrows. Lysander paced with restless energy, his silver hair catching the fading light. We need to prepare, he said, voice sharp as a blade. Nyx's forces will strike soon. The corrupted lands grow wider every day. If we don't act before the next full moon, it may be too late. Maelys folded her arms, brow furrowed. But what of the Winter Court? If we reject their offer, we risk provoking a war on two fronts. Sarah's voice cut through the tension, calm but firm. Their magic may be fierce, but it is also cold and unyielding. We will need more then. Brute force, we will need cunning, and sacrifices none of us are eager to make. Arya stepped forward, feeling the weight of her decision settle like a stone in her gut. Then we prepare for both. We accept their help, but on our terms. Secrets beneath the ice. That evening, as the sky darkened to a bruised purple, Arya met the Winter Court. Anne's envoy once more in the northern wing. The corridor was lined with crystalline ice formations that shimmered faintly with ancient magic, casting ghostly blue reflections on the walls. The envoy was waiting, tall and regal in white fur, lined robes, there. Pale face serene but unreadable. You are wise to seek terms, the envoy said smoothly. But understand our aid will come at a price. Not just promises, not just alliances. Arya's eyes narrowed. Then tell me your price. The envoy's lips curved into a slight smile, almost sad. Blood. A piece of your soul, bound to the Winter Court. Ancient magic. A tether that will bind you to us, and us to you. The air seemed to freeze around her. To give a piece of her soul was to give up a part of her freedom, her very self. But with Nyx's darkness looming, would she afford to refuse? Bonds of power. Returning to her chamber, Arya found Chaol waiting, a look of quiet urgency in his eyes. They demand a tether, Chaol said softly. I feared it. She met his gaze steadily. If I do this, I risk losing myself. Chaol took her hands gently. You are stronger than any magic trying to claim you. And you are not alone. Arya's throat tightened. What if that's not enough? Then we fight, he said simply. The fracture begins that night. A sharp cry echoed from the outer walls. Arya rushed outside to find a group of scouts struggling against a shadowed creature. Twisted and malformed, a monstrous wraith born from Nyx's corruption. Chaol and Lysander joined the fray, blades flashing in the moonlight. The battle was fierce and brutal. The creature howled as it was struck, but seemed almost endless. Arya felt the nocturne essence thrumming wildly, the power begging to be unleashed. She hesitated. This was not the time for reckless use. But as the monster lunged toward Chaol, she reached deep and summoned a searing blast of light. The creature shattered into a cascade of shadows, dissipating into the night. Air, but the cost was clear. The strain left her breathless, trembling. We can't keep fighting like this, Lysander said grimly, not without a plan. Arya looked toward the horizon where the first hints of dawn stained the sky, the fragile alliance with the Winter Court. The burden of the nocturne essence, the ever-looming shadow of Nyx, all of it was converging into a storm she wasn't sure she could survive. Arya sank to her knees as the adrenaline drained from her limbs. Her hands trembled, still glowing faintly from the light she had summoned moments ago. Chaol crouched beside her, concern clouding his usual stoicism. You pushed yourself too hard, he murmured, brushing a strand of hair from her damp forehead. That power? It's a part of you, yes. But it's also a curse if you don't learn to control it. She swallowed hard, still gasping for air. I didn't have a choice. If I hadn't acted. Chaol, you would have been dead. He shook his head. No one wants to see you suffer, Arya. You're carrying too much. Lysander approached, his silver hair tangled and sweat beading at his temples. She's right. This power, the nocturne essence, is growing unstable. It's bound to you, but it's also breaking you down piece by piece. You'll burn out before we can even face Nyx. Arya clenched her fists in frustration. So what's the solution? Let Nyx's darkness swallow us all. We can't win with half measures. Sarah stepped out from the shadows, her dark eyes reflecting the cold light of dawn. The solution lies in balance. Not just power, but wisdom. The tether the Winter Court demands could be the key, or the chains. Chaol's gaze hardened. We risk losing Arya to that magic, but if it's the only way to save the sanctuary, she must decide. The weight of that decision pressed heavily on Arya's heart. She could feel the pull of the Winter Court's magic already, icy, seductive, promising strength in exchange for her very essence. The choice, back in her chamber, Arya sat by the window, staring out at the frost-coated trees. The night was silent except for the whisper of the wind through the branches. Her mind replayed the envoy's words again and again. Blood, soul, tether. Was this what it meant to be a leader? To make impossible choices that fractured the self, in order to protect others? Hair fingers traced the edge of the locket KL had given her long ago, a simple silver chain with a small dark stone. It had been a token of their bond before the darkness came, a promise of trust, strength, and something more fragile beneath it all. Suddenly, a presence stirred behind her. Kale stepped inside, closing the door quietly. "Whatever you decide, you won't be alone." Arya looked up, searching his face for answers. She didn't have. What if I lose myself? What if the tether binds me so tightly that I forget who I am? Kale's voice softened. "Then I'll remind you. Every day. I'll fight to bring you back." She smiled faintly, the spark of hope returning. "Then let's face this darkness together." The ritual. The next evening, beneath the ghostly glow of the full moon, the sanctuary's grand hall was transformed. Ancient runes and sigils glimmered on the stone floor, their light pulsing with otherworldly energy. The air was thick with tension and expectation. Arya stood at the center, her hands trembling as the winter court. Ensign voice stepped forward, hands raised in a graceful, almost ritualistic manner. "You accept the bond," the envoy intoned. Arya nodded, her voice steady despite the storm raging inside her. "I accept." The envoy extended a slender hand, palm open. A soft, ethereal light spilled forth, swirling around Arya like liquid frost. She felt it seep beneath her skin, a chilling touch that both terrified and exhilarated. Memories flashed through her mind, moments of joy, fear, love, and pain, all becoming threads woven into this new tether. And then a sharp pain like a cold fire pierced her chest. Keel reached out instinctively, his eyes wide with alarm. "Arya." But she steadied herself, her breath slow and controlled. The light dimmed, the air stilled. When the ritual ended, Arya felt different. Stronger, yes, but changed, bound. Aftermath. The following days were a blur. Her bond with the Winter Court's magic granted new powers, sharper senses, a strength that defied human limits, and the ability to command the chilling frost that wrapped the sanctuary in a protective veil. But the price was clear. Every time she used the magic, a fragment of her own warmth, the spark of her humanity, ebbed away. Kale watched her closely, his concern growing. "You're pushing yourself too far." Arya shook her head stubbornly. "We don't have time to be careful." Lysander and Sarah trained her, helping her channel the tethered magic without losing herself completely. The sanctuary prepared for war on all fronts, with NEX dark forces advancing, and the Winter Court watching with cold eyes. One night, as the frost painted crystalline patterns on the window panes, Arya stood alone, feeling the tether pulse like a heartbeat beneath her skin. She whispered to the darkness beyond the walls, "I am still me, and I will fight for all of us." Chapter 48. Shadows within the frost. The sanctuary never truly slept. Even beneath the heavy silence of night, the ancient stone walls seemed to hum with a restless energy, an uneasy lull between the encroaching darkness and the fragile peace they had carved out. Arya stood on the balcony of the grand hall, wrapped in a thick cloak threaded with silver embroidery that caught the moonlight like frost crystals. Her breath came in quiet clouds, swirling in the cold air. She watched the forest beyond the sanctuary. Skeletal branches stark against the star, scattered sky shadows flickering and twisting as if alive. The tether thrummed beneath her skin, an icy pulse that synchronized with the slow beat of her heart. Since the ritual, the bond with the Winter Court's magic had become both her greatest strength and deepest vulnerability. Each time she drew on that power, the chill spread deeper into her bones, whispering promises of power and warnings of what she might lose. A soft rustle behind her pulled her from her thoughts. Still awake, Kale's voice was low, laced with the kind of concern that had become familiar. He approached silently, standing just behind her, the flicker of torchlight catching the angles of his sharp features. "I couldn't sleep," Arya admitted, wrapping her arms around herself. "Too much on my mind." Kale nodded, stepping closer. "You carry more than any of us. This bond, this tether, it's changing you." She turned to him, searching his dark eyes. "Am I still me?" He smiled gently, brushing a stray lock of hair from her face. "You're still the Arya I know, the one who fought for this sanctuary. But you're also becoming something more stronger. Maybe even something different." The word hung heavy in the air. Different. It wasn't just the power coursing through her veins, it was the creeping isolation, the subtle alienation from those she loved. "Sometimes I wonder if this power is a gift," Arya whispered, "or a curse." Kale reached out, his fingers warm against her cold skin. "Whatever it is, you don't have to face it alone." For a moment, the world seemed to shrink, the distance between them dissolving. But before she could say more, a sharp crack echoed through the night. a sound too deliberate to be anything natural. Kale's expression hardened. Trouble. The night ambush. Without hesitation, Arya and Kale moved to the courtyard where the rest of their group had gathered. Lysander, Sura, and a handful of guards, all alert and tense. Scouts spotted movement near the western ridge, Lysander reported, his voice grim. Something's coming, and it's not just Nyx's minions. Arya's heart clenched. The tension between the Winter Court and the Sanctuary was fragile enough without outside forces complicating their battle. Suddenly, a burst of movement exploded from the shadows, figures clad in dark cloaks, their faces obscured beneath hoods. The attackers were swift, silent, and deadly. Their weapons glimmered with a strange, unnatural sheen. Enchanted, Arya realized. "Protect the sanctuary," she shouted, stepping forward as her tether flared with power. A veil of frost erupted around her hands, shimmering like spun glass. She sent it surging toward the attackers, a wave of chilling wind that threw them back. Kale moved beside her, his own power flaring as he transformed, his form shifting from man to wolf, sleek, deadly muscles rippling beneath silver fur. He leapt into the fray, fangs bared. But the attackers were relentless. They pressed closer, their enchanted blades cutting through the frost like fire. Arya's vision blurred as she pushed herself harder, the tether's cold magic coursing violently through her. She could feel the familiar sting, her humanity slipping, but there was no time to hesitate. Lysander and Sarah fought with brutal precision, their movements fluid and coordinated, but even they struggled against the onslaught. The battle dragged on, minutes stretching like hours in the moonlit chaos. Then, amidst the clashing steel and biting cold, Arya caught sight of one attacker, a figure apart from the others, moving with a calculated grace. Their eyes gleamed a piercing violet, unnerving and intense. The figure stepped forward, raising a hand to cast a spell, but Kale intersected, tackling them to the ground. A sharp cry rang out, a sound of pain and fury, and then the stranger vanished, slipping into the shadows like a ghost. Aftermath and revelation. The courtyard lay in disarray, scattered leaves frozen midair, broken branches, and fallen weapons glinting under the pale light. Arya collapsed onto a stone bench, chest heaving. Khal joined her, his wolf form fading back to human as exhaustion overtook him. "Who were they?" she asked, eyes scanning the dark woods. Lysander shook his head, frustration evident. "I don't know, but that purple-eyed stranger. It was no common enemy, that magic, it's something else." Sarah nodded grimly. "There are forces at play beyond EX darkness and the Winter Court. Something older, more dangerous." Arya clenched her fists, a cold fire burning beneath her skin. "Then we need to find out what, before it's too late." A hidden message. The next morning, Arya awoke to a soft knock at her door. She opened it to find a messenger, a young boy, pale and trembling, clutching a folded piece of parchment. "From an ally," the boy stammered, eyes wide. Arya took the note, carefully unfolding it. The script was elegant, unfamiliar. It read, "The veil is thinner than you know. Trust no one without the mark of the 3 moons. The shadow with violet eyes comes for the heart of the sanctuary. Beware the fracture within." Her blood ran cold. Kale's voice was sharp as he read over her shoulder. 3 moons. That's a symbol of the Elder Tide, a secretive order thought lost centuries ago. Lysander's eyes narrowed. If they're involved, then the war is far from over. Arya folded the note, steeling herself. "We need allies," she said, "and answers. The burden of power." That night, Arya stood again on the balcony, the tether's icy pulse resonating in her veins. She raised her hands, summoning the cold magic. Frost bloomed at her fingertips, swirling and dancing. But as the power surged, she felt it again, the creeping loss, the chill spreading beyond her skin, invading her soul. A sudden vision flashed before her eyes, a fractured mirror, her reflection shattered and distorted. Faces, hers, Coel's, the violet-eyed stranger reflected back with haunting clarity. The tether was binding her, yes, but it was also breaking something vital. Arya whispered to the night, "I don't know how much longer I can hold on." Shadows gather. Unseen in the forest, eyes gleamed with cold intent. The violet-eyed figure watched the sanctuary from the shadows, lips curling into a cruel smile. "The heart of the sanctuary," they murmured, voice like silk and steel. "Soon it will belong to us all." Chapter 49. The fracture deepens. The sanctuary stirred with a restless energy, its ancient stones humming with unease that even the thickest walls could not contain. Daylight filtered through the narrow windows, casting long shadows across the worn wooden floors and illuminating dust motes dancing in the air like spirits trapped between worlds. Arya moved through the hallways with a measured grace, her mind heavy with the weight of the message she had received the night before. The note from the mysterious ally spoke in riddles, warning of dangers far greater than the constant threats they had faced. The Eldrath, a secretive order thought extinct, had resurfaced. Their emblem, 3 moons, was an ancient symbol steeped in forgotten magic and dark history. She paused at the threshold of the war room, where Kael and Lysander were already deep in discussion, their faces etched with concern. "We can't ignore the note," Arya said, stepping inside. "The Eldrath were ruthless. If they're involved, it means the battle for the sanctuary is far from over." Kael nodded, folding his arms across his chest. "They have a reputation for manipulation and betrayal. They're not like Inix's minions, direct and brutal. The Eldrath work in shadows, using others as pawns." Lysander paced the room, the sound of his boots clicking against the stone floor echoing in the heavy silence. Their goal was always control, over the supernatural and the mortal realms alike. If the violet-eyed stranger is one of them, they're after something specific here. "Something worth fighting for," Sura added quietly, her eyes dark with determination. Arya's gaze hardened. "Then we have to be ready. We need to find the fracture, the weak point within our sanctuary that the note warns about before they exploit it. A search for answers." The next hours were spent gathering what little knowledge they could on the Eldrath. Old tomes were pulled from dusty shelves, and cryptic symbols were examined under flickering candlelight. Arya's tether thrummed, as if responding to the ancient magic they uncovered. "We need to reach out," Lysander said finally. "There are still survivors scattered across hidden enclaves. If we can find them, they might have the answers we lack." Kael looked to Arya. "Do you trust them, these survivors?" Arya hesitated. "I don't know, but we have no choice." The mark of the 3 moons. That evening, Arya sat alone in her chamber, studying the symbol of the 3 moons that had been sketched on the note, a crescent flanked by 2 full moons, arranged in a delicate but foreboding arc. Her fingers traced the pattern, and suddenly a flicker of magic ignited beneath her skin. The tether pulsed in response, colder than ever before, as if the symbol held a hidden power meant only for those who dared to unlock it. A sudden knock at her door broke her concentration. Kael stepped inside, his expression unreadable. "I found something," he said, holding out a small weathered pendant shaped like the 3 moons. "Where?" Arya asked, taking it carefully. "Near the eastern woods. It was buried beneath an ancient oak. Whoever left it wanted us to find it." Arya turned the pendant over in her hands. "It's a sign. A message. But from whom? An unexpected visitor." Before Arya could ponder further, a soft voice echoed from the hallway. "May I come in?" They both turned to see a figure emerging from the shadows. A woman cloaked in midnight blue, her eyes shimmering like the night sky. "I am Alira," she said with a graceful nod, "a surviving member of the Eldrath." Arya's heart stuttered. Kael stepped forward, protective and wary. "Why come here? Why now?" Alira's gaze softened slightly. "Because the fracture within your sanctuary threatens more than your people. It threatens the balance of all realms." She stepped inside, her presence both commanding and serene. "The Eldrath were once guardians, keepers of balance between worlds, but our methods became twisted, and we were cast out, labeled as enemies." Arya studied her carefully. "Why should we trust you?" "Because I am here to warn you. The violet-eyed stranger is one of us, a rogue who seeks to use the fracture to unravel everything." Secrets revealed. Elira moved to the table, spreading out ancient maps and scrolls. "The fracture is not just a physical weak point," she explained. "It is a breach in the magical defenses, a wound left from an old battle between the Eldrath and the Winter Court. It's a place where the veil between worlds is thin." Arya leaned in, captivated. "If this breach is exploited," Elira continued, "darkness will spill through, and not just Nyx's kind. Shadows from beyond the mortal realm will flood in, consuming everything." Kael's jaw tightened. "How do we stop it?" "There is a ritual," Elira said, "one that can seal the fracture, but it requires the power of the 3 moons and the sacrifice of a tether bearer." All eyes turned to Arya, the weight of destiny. Arya felt the cold tether pulse stronger, like a heartbeat echoing through her veins. "A sacrifice," she whispered. "What does that mean for me?" Elira's eyes were gentle but firm. "The tether binds you to this power, but it also binds you to the fracture. To close it, you must offer yourself as the conduit. It will change you forever. Kale stepped closer, voice tight with emotion. There has to be another way. Elira shook her head. There is no other. The bond you share is the key. And the cost. Arya swallowed hard, the weight of the choice pressing down on her. She looked to Kale, Lysander, and Sarah, her chosen family, and saw their unwavering support. I will do it, she said, finally, voice steady despite the fear rising within. Preparing for the ritual, the sanctuary buzzed with preparation. Ancient symbols were drawn, protective wards placed, and chants rehearsed. Elira guided them through each step, her knowledge invaluable. Arya trained her focus, practicing channeling the tether's power without losing herself. Kale stayed close, a constant presence of strength and reassurance. Late into the night, Arya stood alone on the balcony again, the pendant of the 3 moons warm against her chest. She whispered a vow to the cold wind. I will protect this sanctuary, no matter the cost. The violet-eyed stranger watches, hidden in the dark forest. The violet-eyed stranger observed the sanctuary's preparations, lips curling into a cruel smile. Your sacrifice will be in vain. Arya, they whispered, the fracture will consume you, and the world. The shadow slipped away, disappearing like a ghost on the wind. Chapter 50, The Last Binding. The sanctuary held its breath. A tense silence had fallen, heavy and thick, as the dawn crept across the horizon, painting the ancient stones with golden light. Inside the war room, Arya stood surrounded by the remnants of countless battles, faded maps, worn weapons, and flickering candles whose flames danced nervously in the quiet. Today, the fracture would be sealed. Today, everything would change, the calm before the storm. Arya's heartbeat drummed in her ears as she traced the intricate symbols laid out before her, runes that promised both salvation and sacrifice. The tether hummed against her skin, alive with raw, pulsing magic. It was a binding as old as the sanctuary itself, a connection between realms, power, and fate. Hale, Lysander, and Sarah gathered close, their faces etched with resolve and fear. The weight of what was to come pressed down on them all. Are you ready? Kale asked quietly, stepping forward. Arya met his gaze, her own eyes steady. I have to be gathering the power. Lyra moved gracefully, chanting the ancient incantations, her voice low and melodic, weaving the threads of magic that pulsed between the stones and the sky. The 3 moons pendant glowed fiercely on Arya's chest, its light spreading like liquid silver over her skin. Outside, the sanctuary's wards flared to life, shimmering shields forming in an invisible dome that rippled against the dark energies pressing in from the fracture. The violet-eyed stranger lurked beyond the boundary, seething with rage. You think you can stop this? They snarled, voice dripping with venom. The fracture is a wound that will never heal, and you will be its first victim. The confrontation. As the ritual advanced, the air thickened with magic. Shadows twisted and writhed, creeping closer to the walls as if drawn by an unseen force. Suddenly, the doors to the war room slammed open. The violet-eyed stranger stepped inside, eyes burning with an unnatural light, power radiating from their form like wildfire. End this farce, Arya, they commanded. You cannot hold back what is coming. Kale moved to block them, but the stranger's dark magic surged, throwing him against the wall with a force that shook the room. Stay back, Arya shouted, her voice cutting through the chaos. She raised her hand, summoning the tether's power, which flared like a blazing star. The stranger laughed, a chilling sound that echoed through the hall, the battle within. The room became a tempest of clashing magic and wills. Arya felt the tether strain, the power flooding through her like a storm. Images flashed before her eyes, memories not her own. Battles fought in realms beyond sight, sacrifices made long ago. The violet-eyed stranger lunged, dark tendrils of shadow twisting toward her heart. But Arya's tether flared brighter, a shield of pure light that shattered the darkness. You are not alone, she whispered fiercely, drawing strength from the bond she shared with her companions. The sacrifice. Lyra's voice rang out, guiding Arya to the center of the ancient circle, where the fracture yawned like a wound in reality itself. Place your hands upon the stones, Elira instructed. The tether will bind you to the fracture and seal it, but once begun, there is no turning back. Arya stepped forward, breath steady despite the storm raging inside her. She placed her hands on the cold stones, feeling the fracture's raw energy surge through her fingers into her veins. Pain exploded, sharp, burning, overwhelming. The tether pulsed wildly, tethering her soul to the fracture, weaving her essence into the very fabric of the sanctuary's magic. A world on the edge. Outside, the sanctuary trembled as the fracture fought back, darkness spilling like ink across the edges of the protective wards. Kale, Lysander, and Syrah formed a protective circle, channeling their own magic to bolster the seals. The violet-eyed stranger screamed fury and desperation, twisting their form into something monstrous. But Arya's voice rose, clear and commanding. "By the power of the 3 moons I bind you. By the strength of my tether, I close the wound." Light burst forth, blinding and pure, flooding the sanctuary with a warmth that chased away the shadows. The final binding, the fracture shrank, pulling closed like a healed scar. Arya felt her strength ebbing away, her body growing faint as the tether's power anchored her to the sanctuary forever. Her vision blurred, but she saw Kale, as face one last time, his eyes filled with tears and unspoken love. "You saved us," he whispered. "And I will always be with you," she replied, voice barely audible. Aftermath and new beginnings. The sanctuary stood silent, the wards glowing faintly under the morning sun. The violet-eyed stranger was gone, defeated but not destroyed. Kale, Lysander, and Syrah gathered around the circle where Arya's light still shimmered, a promise and a blessing. Elira bowed her head. "The fracture is sealed, but the balance is fragile. We must remain vigilant." Kale looked up, resolve burning bright. "We will protect this place for her and for all who call it home." Epilogue: The legacy of the tether. In the quiet aftermath, the tether pulsed softly beneath the sanctuary's stones, a living heartbeat in the magic that bound them all. Arya's sacrifice had forged a new path, one of hope, unity, and strength, and though she was gone from sight, her light would never fade. The monsters were bound, but their story and hers would live forever.